I'm never gonna go there again. This is what it is. This is who I am. This is where I finally take my stand. I didn't want to fall, but I don't have to go. I'm not the one with two star hands. Giving him the best of everything that's left of. The life inside this man. I've been born again.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Fresh Black Coffee. I'm Black, he's Coffee, and this gentleman is fresh. We went a little bit backwards. But anyway, Eddie Huff, David Van Risingham, and our special guest, it's a real treat this week. We have the district attorney for Tulsa, the entire county of Tulsa. That's right. Stephen Kunzweiler is with us today. Yay!
Did you still have some of Pawnee County?
No, never did.
Okay, it was the judge district that correct.
Yeah. It's this district, this 14th judicial district, which includes Pawnee, and then it's the 14th district attorney's district, and that's just Tulsa.
Yeah.
So, yes. So, I mean, I'm sure you've got enough to do with just Tulsa
Yes,
County.
I'll just take Tulsa County all by itself. It's more than enough work there.
Yes, yes. The counselor and I, we've known each other for, wow, it's been several years. I don't know if you remember when you first ran for district attorney.
I
you
remember.
came in.
I remember.
Sure you do remember?
Yeah, I came right in here.
Yeah, I came in and I said, who's this guy walking into my office like this? I thought maybe it's a prospective client or, insurance client. And he introduced himself. And ever since then, and then later, several times on the Pat Campbell show, our dear late friend, Pat Campbell. But anyway, it's been a good journey. I've just to show how I am, I was even hard on you a few times when you came into the show.
That's actually kind of funny because in my line of work, if anybody's hard on me, I should quit the job because it's like that's the nature of what we do every day is people are yelling at you, people are angry at you, people are frustrated. It's that entire dynamic. And so for me, that's like raindrops hitting me. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be softening your blows, but
no. But
it's
see,
like you have to have a tough skin to be in that business.
Exactly. And conversely, I mean, if you're truly doing your job as a broadcaster, then you can't go easy on anyone. Correct. And a lot of people don't understand. For example, I wrote this book, Y'all Have Sinned. I
was laughing at that title. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, and it's a play.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah, but in fact, remind me. I'll give you one when you leave.
All right, I'll read.
But in there, and the reason I say y'all is actually all, but in the other is you,
right,
as an individual. But anyway, I was speaking to a Republican club, and there's a part in there where I go after Ronald Reagan. For example, I'll pull a little jewel out for you all. The California has some of the most stringent gun laws in America, and the strictest gun laws in America. Well, most people don't know that's due to Ronald Reagan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And guess what else?
Heresy.
Yes, exactly. But see, that's why I don't pull punches. I go, if I go where the truth leads me. Yeah. And it was he and the NRA when the Black Panthers, I don't know if you're old enough, Steve, to remember this, but when the Black Panthers used to walk around Oakland and in Oakland County with the shotguns and
their guns
and weapons. Well, Ronald Reagan was governor at the time, and the NRA with Ronald Reagan didn't want those N-words walking around with guns scaring people, and that's when they instituted the first strict gun laws in California, and it spread from there.
Yep. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
You talk about people fully expressing their ire over what your department does. Full disclosure, my daughter takes those calls.
Oh, she does. Yeah.
She's receptive and answers the phone. And that's especially this Owasso case, young transgender student, and that, oh my God, they had her on recording, trying to trip her up and everything. She's a tough little gal. She can hold her own. But this is something your office deals with every day. Right.
Well, if you just think about it, I mean, I've say this a lot. It's like if you're talking with the DA, the great percentage is that you're not there to have a pleasant conversation. It's either I'm pointing a finger at you because you did something that crossed the line, or I'm trying to counsel you over you being victimized. And that's never a meeting you want to have. People don't want to be talking to the DA in the DA's office because it's a sad experience or it's a worrisome experience.
Why have you done it for so long? I could not imagine.
So I was a gift of God, is what I say. I had, so back in high school, I had people tell me, you need to go be a lawyer. Right?
Yeah.
And I didn't, my mom was a waitress. She didn't graduate high school. My dad graduated high school, went to a trade school, learned to be a draftsman. And so I'm the third of four boys. So the second brother and I basically were the first people on either side of the family to go to college. So it's kind of blind going into that entire advanced education. And I always kind of knew I would probably go to law school. So anyway, I eventually get accepted to go to law school. I picked TU, come down here first year. I'm just kind of sitting back like, wow, this is really cool. But I had no idea, literally, even at that time, what I was going to do. And my wife, Christine, we were engaged, and for some crazy reason, she took a job in Hampton, Virginia, which is by Norfolk. And so we were 1,000 miles apart from each other. She's her first job, and I'm in law school. And so after my first year, there was a Commonwealth attorney who was a client of hers who said, well, yeah, he can intern in our office. And so I go there. And at that point, I had never met a police officer. I had never been in a courtroom. I had only talked with a judge once to kind of get a gauge of what law school's like. And the first day on the job, guy gives me an accordion file, and it's the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Chester Eugene Stark. And he says, just take that home and read it and tell me what you get out of it. And so I go, and I remember it's June of 87, and it's a murder file. And I'm looking at police reports, and I'm looking at pictures of a guy with a dead body. And I remember very clearly just looking at my wife saying, I know exactly what I'm going to do. It was as though it made total sense at that point. Everything up to that point made sense. I'm Catholic. I grew up in a very right is right, wrong is wrong world, very black is black, white is white. If there were consequences, that's where the gray came in. And so for me, it was a God thing. I knew right at that moment in June of 87, that's what I should be doing. And so I just haven't looked back. And, and you want that for everybody, right? You want every human being to say, man, I want to be a car mechanic, or I want to be an astronaut, that they can find their niche. I feel like it was the one thing that I feel I should be doing.
So that's what made you decide you want to be a prosecutor versus on the other side making money. No, well, because that was going to be my question. What made you decide to take the prosecutorial route versus the defense or the other side of it?
My wife says, back in the day, she's like, well, I'm marrying a lawyer. And then she figured out, I didn't marry a lawyer. I married a prosecutor. Yeah. No money in prosecution.
Well, yeah. I had you come to NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness.
I remember that meeting. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and I was one of the pretty staunch conservatives in most of the liberal room.
Right.
But we had you and your Democrat opponent, Jenny Prohl, the next week. Right. And Jenny mentioned to us, she said, I used to work in Kunzweiler's office. They start us at $42,000 a year.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that, over this course, I always tell people, it was like, how do you tell the difference between a politician and a public servant? And, I'm in that political world, but I always tell people, hey, I'm a prosecutor, I'm not a politician. But the way to kind of tell the difference is you ask that person, hey, David, I see you just got elected to be a state representative. How long do you think you're going to do this job? And if David says, well, his term limited at 12 years, I'm hoping to give, maybe 10 years or maybe the full 12. You're now talking to a politician. You're not talking to a public servant, because David got elected to serve 2 years. And so my philosophy has always been, when people elect you to represent them in a particular position, it's pedal to the metal for the term that you have. Now, whether you choose or whether you do a good enough job to run again, that you make that decision towards the end of that particular term, but you shouldn't be sitting there saying, hey, my plan is to be here for the next whatever, because the tendency is people delay all that stuff. And that's why we have inept resolution problems in government. Is you're kicking a can down the road. It's like, well, Social Security, well, we'll just kick the can down the road. Oh, well,
after the next election.
Correct. And nobody has to make this hard decision. And I tell people, like in 1907, when we became a state, if a guy was coming from Bartlesville, Oklahoma to go to Oklahoma City, he wasn't in a car on an interstate. He's probably riding a horse or in a wagon. And his job was, I've got a general store to run. So when all those legislators showed up in Oklahoma City, it was, what's the problem? Get it solved. I got to get back home. Right now it's a job down there, and they're viewing it as a job. So my focus to begin with was, I got at least established street cred. And you remember after I got elected, it was like you had Stanley Glanz, had Shannon Kepler, had Betty Shelby, had all those things within that first 4 years. And I just had to just get into that. But then after that, I was like, if I can establish street cred, then if I run again, it's got to be somehow to increase compensation for state workers in my office. And so we've done a really good job of elevating that. And the legislature's done a decent job of recognizing, we need to better compensate people. And now I'm in my third term. And I tell you're probably not accustomed to seeing me wear a beard, but I've gotten to that point where I'm just tired of bureaucrats. And my wife's like, what are you doing growing your beard? I was like, this is battle beard time. I feel like I'm in Lord of the Rings, and it's time to take out the big frickin' sword and start taking heads off. I'm serious about that, because, you got chosen by somebody, either appointed by a governor or appointed by a mayor or elected by people to fix things. Yeah. And this isn't a for-profit business. This is getting problems fixed. And because you mentioned NAMI, right? National Association for Mental Illness, right? Your frustrations fell into my lap, right? I've got a daughter who has mental illness, and I began to analyze the incompetency within the bureaucrats who are running these agencies. Correct. And so, I'm just like, I'm tired of this. Yeah. And if you can't do your dang job, who's going to make you do your job? And so I started basically doing that. I was starting to expose people within state agencies, and I should be held accountable too, right? At the end of the day, if I'm not doing my job, I would hope a citizen would confront me about, hey, you're not doing what you claim that you say you're doing, and justify yourself or get out of the way, because there are people that do want to solve the problem. So my goal, I would love to do nothing more than be in a courtroom and litigate cases. And I'm tired of why do I have to show you how to do mental health? And why do I have to show you how to do safeguarding children in the Office of Juvenile Affairs? Or why do I have to teach you how to deal with foster care or kids who are deprived? It's like, that shouldn't be my job. But at the end of the day, I'm not seeing anybody step up to do the job. And so, I'm back into somewhat battle beard mode. Yeah. And if I've got to expose hypocrisy, or if I've got to expose incompetence, I guess I just have to do that. And so I'll be held accountable for my words. I don't have any problem with that. If I'm saying something that's untrue, then confront me about it and prove I'm wrong. there's way too many things that are happening in this country, and Tulsa County is no different. But I think Oklahoma really has been pretty well positioned to fix a lot of things for the rest of the country. We got good leadership. That leadership just needs to kind of step up and say, all right, I got to solve this problem. Let's get this thing fixed. So,
wow, that's great. I still remember. I have to go back to something that happened, and you mentioned the Shelby case.
Right.
I think that's one of the most masterful jobs of a district attorney I've seen. And I'll tell you what, I didn't agree with the outcome on a personal level. I mean, just the way I look at it.
I didn't agree with the outcome either.
but the way you handle it right in the beginning, with the charge to me to placate a community. In other words, I think you avoided a volatile situation in Tulsa that could have happened if you hadn't charged the way it was charged.
Yeah, Charlotte had rioting.
But I'm sorry, but I'm going to disagree with you on that because I was just doing my job, right? I mean, shame on me if I'm sitting there doing this stuff and saying, what's the prevailing winds in this environment? That's not what you hire prosecutors to do. You hire me to look at the law and look at the facts. And if I believe you're in theory, you're trusting my judgment to ascertain, do I have a reasonable belief that a judge or a jury could find this particular person guilty of a crime? I made that assessment. I could not, in looking at the facts, evaluate the case any differently than I did. In my opinion, Betty Shelby committed a crime. That's why we have criminal courts of law. I may be wrong, but it's my duty to persuade a jury. A jury came back and found her not guilty. Okay, I get it. Right. But that jury also wrote a note that said she should not be in law enforcement. So I knew I was in that spot where I'm trying to prevent a fire in Tulsa. That was never. I mean, if I made the opposite decision, it would have been based on the facts and the law. So I don't make decisions based on, I'm sure you have lots of people that will say this, but I'm just telling you, I don't make decisions based on whether I'm going to be liked or not. But I don't.
I have one of those living room law degrees, and I put that up against yours.
Okay, let's go. Let's motto a motto. Let's see.
Listen, I've done research on Wikipedia. My Wikipedia library. No, I'm just kidding. No, but anyway, I just felt that the way it was handled and I'm with you. I just felt that I didn't feel any jury would convict her of first degree. Right. I just never felt that happen. But then in the end, the way they found her, they weren't going to find her for that. And so I don't want to relitigate or go over it. But I'm just saying it was a really tough situation, but I feel in the end, it was handled well and the outcome ended up well. So, for the city itself.
My job is,
but no,
I just want people to work for me that don't get caught up in that stuff. I was like, your job is to evaluate what's in front of you.
If I could say, what you're telling me is your motivation wasn't to placate. What Eddie's saying is the speed at which, once you were confident, yes, I need to do this.
Right.
You didn't waste time.
Right.
Don't ask him justice delayed is justice denied.
Right.
I do agree with that. I do agree with what you're saying there, which was you don't sit around and wait for somebody to give you some of
right.
I could,
like you said, don't do
like I said, I could watch a video like everybody else, and I could watch an interview like everybody else, and I'm called to make those kinds of decisions because it's public safety is a big deal. And that's my primary job is to protect my community. And so, not that I'm sitting there saying, wow, Betty Shelby is a threat to the community, but, I make those decisions on people who aren't police officers every day. And I don't sit there and, wring my hands over. What should I do? What should I do? I listen to investigators. I listen to what other people, witnesses have said, and I make a decision, and then I move forward. Sometimes the public may think differently about it, and that's what courtrooms are for.
Right, and I just feel it really de-escalated a situation because Sharpton shows up and.
Oh my gosh! There was well, no, it's Benjamin Crump.
Yeah, Crump. Yeah,
I was never so angry when that crowd showed up, because what they had done was they had taken. One of the arguments that they were making was, the window was up, right? The window. Or I'm sorry.
Up.
Yeah, whatever it was. But it was a view from like 300 or 400 foot up from a helicopter. I mean, you couldn't. When they blew it up, it distorted the whole deal. But there's like, oh no, he couldn't have gotten into the car. I was like, no, I was there. I went out there. I saw it. I got crime scene videos. The window was halfway down. He was definitely going into the window. I don't know what as it turns out, I think there was a bottle of PCP right in the little door thing there. And I think that's probably what he was going for, was to get that and destroy it or whatever. But, nobody knows what he was doing at the time.
Yeah. We know the poor guy. He was on something. Yeah, I guess it was a PCP. I mean, poor, I felt bad. And, I mean, the thing is, I felt that Shelby,
she spun herself up, in my opinion.
Right.
She abandoned ballistic protection. If her fear was, oh gosh, this guy's going to go for a gun.
Right.
Why are you out of the street when you could easily have just taken ballistic cover behind a car?
And you and I talked shortly thereafter at the Republican Men's Club, and I relayed to you what Pat Campbell had said, is that taser was 12 inches from her ear.
Correct.
When he pops,
I agree.
I think it was
sympathetic fire was my theory.
Litigated in court that theory.
Right.
No, we did.
Oh, you did.
No, that was exactly our theory.
But that would have led to an involuntary manslaughter.
Well, no. I mean, so that's what we had charged. We charged manslaughter in first degree, right? Yeah. And so, the homicide results as a result of some type of unreasonable emotional reaction, right? So the typical manslaughter is I catch my wife in bed with another man, and I don't specifically intend to kill, but my emotions overcome my ability to make a rational decision to get him out of the house. Or it's some overwhelming fear, right? It's a panic moment, right?
You get a thunder strikes next to your house and you jump.
Correct.
You're not attacking the thunder. Spasm impulse.
Right.
And that's what I think was happening.
But at the end of the day, my recollection was the argument was I believe he was going for a gun, and I felt I was justified for doing it. You told me that in the interrogation. Yeah, that
she kind of rolled that out, but I still think that the truth was that
I think it was a sympathetic fire. That was my theory. Jury didn't see it as
well. There we go. So. We just relitigated the case.
Yes. Right. Maybe we can move on.
Yeah. Let's talk about others.
In general, what do you see the crime situation in Tulsa as right now? Are we in an upward tick? Are we coming down? And the second part to that would be, what do you see as the reason behind either one?
Drugs runs the show. So we still have a lot of methamphetamine issues going on. Really? We have a lot of opioid issues going on. That is the catalyst for people breaking into people's homes, breaking into their cars, stealing things from Walmart, vandalizing particular things. That's the show. And there's a bit of a byproduct, and I warned people about this way back when we passed Proposition 780. I was like, hey, it's the same as California Proposition Proposition 47. If you Google that up, you'll see that California is trying to walk back Proposition 47. And when we were doing Proposition 780, I was like, we're going to be here in about 5 or 10 years, and it's going to play out. So that's where we're at.
I remember the night it passed. You were standing in the wall at a watch party. I went over to the press area. I came back. I said, "Hey, did you hear about that?" His jaw dropped about 8 inches. So when I said it passed by 17 points. Yeah. Because you were like, it was reality check. Oh my God.
Yeah, here we go. Right. And so now, you have business leaders all around this community who are complaining because the effect of liberalized drug laws, and it emboldens the drug addict. It takes away the stick that I have to compel them to get into drug treatment type court programs as an alternative to going to prison. And so now you have these perpetual misdemeanors. Now,
is that really your job, though, to try to use it as a stick to become their counselor and push them into that?
How do you parent your kids? You tell your kids.
Is that really the role that you
Yes. In the end of the day, I kind of look at judges as calling balls and strikes, and I look at prosecutors kind of a bit of a parental role. I have the obligation to make decisions on what is a crime or not, and then I have the obligation to assess what's an appropriate punishment for the infraction, right? So when I'm disciplining my kid who on the first day takes a crayon and writes on the wall, I was like, hey, honey, you don't do that. We don't write on the wall. And if my kid took that crayon and went on there, I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, honey, don't do that. It's like,
that's the role of a parent, to train up a child. Is it your role to train up the population?
Who else is
on
David?
Personal
David, who's going to do that if they're going to do things that are crimes, right? Who's that? Whose job is that?
If a person decides, hey, I take a shot of brandy before I go to sleep at night, or
I don't police that.
Exactly, we don't. Right. But you've seen how alcohol destroys so many lives, but we've been down that road of prohibition.
And that's why you and Eddie invite the Tulsa County DEI on to have these kind of conversations so that I can start explaining at least to the public. It's like we all have a role in that. Yeah. You got a member of your family that has addiction issues. Are you just going to sit there and watch it roll by, or do you confront them about their behaviors? And then you ask for help when you need it beyond your capacity, right? And sometimes that ends up getting the DA involved.
Well, we've both been involved in mental health interventions.
Correct.
When they need help, it's a compassion thing. It's coming from an honorable place, an honorable motive.
Right.
But I'm just saying, what somebody decides in their personal life, I get now. We got a real issue with physical addiction and the crime that stems from it.
When their personal decisions intersect my safety, when their personal decisions intersect my ability to run a business.
Or exploiting children.
Yeah, any of that. When that intersects, and now you've invited dad into the equation. I'm saying that kind of pejoratively, but I then have to say, all right, it's time for the spanking.
And it brings us back to the original question about crime. Mm-hmm. And as he said, he's seen an increase in crime related to
you can't walk down the doggone streets of any part of this town without seeing some dude who's homeless and under the influence of something, either a paranoid, delusional, whatever, and he's trying psychosis and probably self-medicating a lot on that.
Yes.
And we have only gotten here because we collectively passed ridiculous laws that liberalize how we're going to treat addiction issues. We've only gotten here because we've allowed the system itself to decay. And so, the infrastructure for the Department of Mental Health is nowhere close to what it should be. And that's, I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican, but I'm also a Catholic. And I think there are some things you can be conservative on, and there's some things you need to be a little more proactive about. And so that the public safety component, in my opinion, public safety has to incorporate protecting some very vulnerable people like the mentally ill, right?
Yeah, but I don't think it's necessarily liberal to say, you know what, it costs us a lot less to put you through a couple weeks of mental health treatment rather than 90 days in Vic Regalato's jail.
Right. Without us.
It costs him way more. They are his most expensive inmates.
But see, now here's where I come in. I don't think a couple of weeks does any good. And the reason I say that is from personal experience. Family members, okay? They go in for up to 6 weeks and come out, and then and there's I won't mention names because I don't want to embarrass the family, or I don't have a right to, but I know of a young man, football player in town. Same thing, him, got involved in drugs, went into rehab 6 weeks or so, came out, and, felt it was okay. But because he had been in rehab, came out, took the same amount as before, overdose, and died. And so these are areas, it takes more. It takes more.
Well,
and the best way, I think, still is, as our district attorney says, to me, still the best deterrent is punishment. You've got to have a stick. And it goes back to the days of Benjamin Spock. Ever since Benjamin Spock changed our rules of engagement with bad children, we have seen our entire society change.
Okay, but we just conflated two things.
No. We're not going to. No, wait. Stop.
Drugs.
No, it's all under the same umbrella.
Wow.
It's under the no. I mean, those children grew up into adults with their own children, and I see it as the same thing: crime and punishment. And when they're children, it's disobedience and punishment, or
yeah. So the kind of the way I look at it is there's a spectrum, and I may have said this when I was on Pat Campbell's show. I mean, there's kind of a spectrum with regard to consequences, right? Depending on the infraction that your kid commits, it's either, what I used to say is either a lecture, a grounding, or a spanking. I mean, when you're going to get involved in the lives of your kids for consequences, it falls there, right? And you as the parent have to make a decision as to what's the best outcome that I'm hoping to impact on this young person so that I don't destroy them, right? But I am correcting a course or what I would view as a bad decision-making path, right? Well, it's the same in criminal justice, right? I mean, there's some people in some cases where all I need to do is a lecture. All right, so what's that? That's the probation type cases that we frequently will do. Sometimes if they're reoffending, right, then it becomes kind of the, hey, we're going to have to ground you for a bit. And sometimes that means I'm putting you in jail for a stint in time, and then I'm going to monitor you some more on probation. And then there's just some that you look at and it's like, hey, this isn't any, we're not having a conversation here. You molest a kid, that's like a spanking. I am sending you to prison. I'm not negotiating very much on that deal. You're going to prison. So the job of a prosecutor, and really I think the job of defense attorneys and judges, is all to kind of all be on somewhat the same pages. Is this a lecture, grounding, or spanking? And the ones that give us the most grief is that grounding crowd, because they've been here before and they keep on reoffending. It's kind of what you're saying is like when they're caught up in addiction, or maybe they have unaddressed mental health issues, you get frustrated. I also kind of divide it between the people I'm upset with versus the people I'm afraid of.
There you go. That's so important.
Right. And so the people I'm afraid of are the same people you're afraid of, and I want them off my streets. It's this population that's occupying all my time. Is like, how many times do I need to tell you to stop smoking crack cocaine? Or how many times do I need to tell you to stop doing weed or drinking alcohol? You're not only destroying your life, but you are impacting lives around you. And at some point you're going to cross over and hurt somebody. And it's unfortunate. I mean, a guy driving drunk, I'm sure he didn't intend to kill anybody, but you killed somebody. You got to go to prison for that. So that's how I view it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And David, to your point, yes, I think to some extent we have been too lenient in dealing with the alcohol offender. Okay. Sometimes we don't punish them or have not punished them enough in the same manner. Okay. Yeah. So maybe, but it's like the two wrongs don't make a right.
Right.
So it's not to say, because we're not dealing with this in the same ways we're dealing with this, we need to go lighter on these guys. Maybe we need to relook how we're treating the alcohol offender to get less alcohol crimes or less alcohol murders, or not murder, but let's say manslaughter, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can have views. I mean, there's never anyone correct for you. I'm one of those guys who tends to think he's right all the time, right? And I have to have guys like David.
Only you're the only one in the room.
Right.
You're the only one in the room who has that problem.
That's your job.
Right. But this kind of harkens back to when I first became a prosecutor. And so, when you are a baby prosecutor, I did child support enforcement for about a year and a half, and then I landed in Nowata County and was full-time criminal prosecuting. It was me, a secretary, and an investigator in that county. And I had this judge, and his name was James Sontag, and he was German, Catholic, and stubborn, and I was German, Catholic, and stubborn, right? And so but he was a wonderful man. I attribute who I am today to two people. That's Judge Sontag, and that's my wife, Christine. I mean, both of those people were foundational in who I am. A lot with my parents.
I'm libertarian enough to know that, what a person decides, whether it's a 6-pack or a reefer, is a personal decision. See, I kind of set marijuana. Keep in mind, I'm a total teetotaler since 79. Okay. But unless it's impacting the public,
but it does.
A choice.
It does. Because you talk about child exploitation, right? I usually ask that and say, have you ever seen the children who live in a house where mom and dad are smoking weed?
Okay.
Because mom and dad smoking weed will always say it doesn't affect me, but then I see that their house is a trash dump and they're not getting their kids to school.
All of them?
A lot of them.
I know some very wealthy people. You know the kind of clientele I have in my business. And they don't all fit that narrative.
But a bunch do.
Well, okay, but you're trying to paint a very monolithic narrative here.
Well, read the literature, right? This discussion about marijuana being not a problem. The literature is pretty pronounced now that there is a correlation between the ingestion of this high potency marijuana and the onset of psychosis. That is not in dispute, right?
Yeah, a schizophrenic person needs to totally stay away from
it. Right, but people who are in their 40s and 50s who've never done it and they watch some stupid ad on TV that says, I've heard that this might take care of my anxiety, and then they flip into psychosis,
I tell you what,
right?
My dad was on tranquilizers my whole childhood because of PTSD from one tour of duty. Right. We're sending these guys on 3 and 4 and wondering why they're having panic attacks, flashbacks, and for a certain segment of them, it's a better acute treatment when they're in a panic attack.
Okay.
Under medical supervision.
I like that, but I would tell you, I mean, I don't want to polarize it too much, but a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is due to an absence of a strong devotion to God. Yeah. We do not trust or believe right now. I mean, it's sad, but we're almost living in an age where people are questioning, one, the existence of God, or that God is benevolent.
Right.
It's almost like we're at that stage where people think, well, God is like Zeus and mankind is just there for his fun.
No, I get it.
And we have so many young people who don't even understand the story of creation and the story of why God wants to have this relationship with us. And if you get a generation or 2 or 3 of those people thinking that way, then you're going to have a lot of anxiety. You're going to have a lot of poor problem solving. You're going to have a lot of PTSD and a lot of trauma, and they don't know where to go. I would think it'd be a terribly lonely life to not be able to say, God, I don't like what I'm going through, but I need your assistance. There's a lot of people don't even know how to pray. Right? So that's my take.
I'm on your side on this one.
Yeah.
He and I for 3 years have been arguing about this situation.
It's fun.
Have me more on your program more often.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm the former doper. And I'm the guy who used to in my former life in college, and
and that's a valid perspective.
Yeah,
you are informed in a way I'm not.
Yeah. And I will say I was doing the stuff with the stems and the way back in the 60s, so early 70s. So and the stuff today I understand is so much more powerful than anything that was going on in the 60s.
And it begs the question. I mean, this is the evilness of that corporate part of America. The people who sold us the lie on tobacco are the same group that now have invaded into the marijuana industry. And ask yourself the question, why did we ever need to increase the potency of marijuana? Why? There's a reason for that. And if you research tobacco, I mean, I know back in the 50s or whatever it was, they started realizing people seem to be dying of lung cancer. Mm-hmm. And so that was the beginnings of the tobacco industry realizing, oh, we might have a liability problem. Mm-hmm. Now, this is my interpretation of it. I could be totally wrong, but I think what the tobacco industry realized was at some point we're going to get dinged because the medicine's going to catch up with the idea that our product is deadly. That was the very time where they started enhancing tobacco, where nicotine and all these additives started getting in there. Well, what was the reason for that? It created addiction to tobacco. Yep. And so their goal was, this is my opinion, but if we're going to get dinged from a liability standpoint, well, then let's just create as large enough addicted population that, at some point we'll get the ding, but we'll still have this population that's dependent on our product. And so they created that. Well, what's going on in the marijuana industry is, in my opinion, the same thing. It's like at some point somebody's going to realize this is bad stuff. But if we get enough people addicted on that, they will need it still, even after we have the liability. And then they're going to move on to the other medications or drugs. That's the industry.
Yeah. Where you and I think are going to agree on this is if a person's life is so unsatisfying that they need something like this as a vice, they need professional help.
Correct.
To find out what's the real reason.
Right.
And really seek out and find that. Because a lot of times, for instance, and I know you and I both care for family members who've had serious mental health challenges. And you have to find out what's really at the core. What are you dealing with?
It's getting to why, right? I mean, I don't know the book, but I think there's a guy who has a principle that says you basically have to ask why 5 times to get to the real reason why somebody's doing something. Mm-hmm. And I saw Judge Sontag in Nowata County kind of introduced me to that concept. I had a kid who broke into a house and judges. Yeah,
there's the reason they give, and then there's the real reason.
Correct. And the judge really pressed this guy because I was giving the kid some measure of probation that wasn't addressing why he was breaking into the house. But Judge Sontag went beyond that and ultimately peeled back that the reason the kid was breaking into the house was he needed money for drugs. And so the judge, once he got that kid to say that, right, drugs had nothing to do with the crime he was guilty of, meaning, did you break into Miss Green's house? Yes. Well, what's the elements of that crime? I broke and entered the house of another person with intent to take property therein. All right. Those are the 4 things that I had to prove. Being drug addicted had nothing to do with me proving that, but Judge Sontag figured that out. So when he added into the probation rules, it was like, listen, I get you should do community service. Listen, I get you ought to pay some fines or whatever, and you should have a probation officer, but I'm going to require you get a drug and alcohol assessment. So, because that's what we got to be looking at. We got to figure out why you are so addicted that you had to break in somebody's house and take their property. That's the problem solving that all of us have to do, but that takes time. Yeah. And what my frustration in the criminal court process is, I see too much herding of cattle. It's gotten to this point where there's no personal relationship between the judge and the defendant, and I mean that very sincerely. It's a contract between the judge and the defendant. The judge has total control over sentencing. Yeah. Judge, theoretically, if somebody entered a blind plea, could send somebody off to prison for whatever the maximum term was. Judge Jesse Harris, you remember Jesse Harris? By far, by far one of the best judges I have ever run across because he understood that principle. And so he made it a very personal conversation between him and the defendant. He just basically is like, all right, I know the defense attorney's got a job. I know the DA's got a job, but I'm giving you probation, and you and I are going to have an understanding of what that's going to be. And you and I are going to have an understanding of what's going to happen if you violate our agreement. And man, when those guys would come back for violations of probation, Judge Harris was treating them like a parent. I mean, like as opposed to me being the parent, the prosecutor, the judge understood it and said, we had this conversation once before. You marked a crayon on the wall. Now you're doing it again. I'm not going to let you get a free ride, right? There's more punishment that's coming down your way. We need more time spent with individuals in those moments in time. I've often told people, is like, if you want to solve crime, spend more time with the people who are committing the crime and have a much more personal relationship with them because they need it. Mm-hmm. Right? You're saying it. You're saying you got to drill down to understand why they're doing it. How do you heal any human being? He's like, I need to figure out why you're hurting so bad. And you say with your family member that has mental health illness and me and with my family, it's like, I really want to help that person drill down to get rid of that, whatever traumatic circumstance was, so that they can be free of that weight, so that they can make good decisions in their life. But sometimes they run away from that. They don't want to go to those dark spots.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to live under mental illness and recovery. Courage that you and
I agree with you. That's some of the most courageous people I've ever met to like I said, when my daughter had her episode, I was like, who would say, I'd like to be mentally ill? I don't know a human being on the planet that said
your best press conference ever.
Yeah, who wants that, right? So we owe it to that population to figure out how to help them out of that, and that's why I'm wearing battle beard. That's why I got the Lord of the Rings sword, and that's why because I am tired of it. It's like, what have you been doing for the past 20 years?
Hey, it's current events.
Yeah, let me ask one quick drug-related question here. The fentanyl. Has that reached Tulsa?
No, it's terrible.
An epidemic.
It's terrible. So as the DA, I mean, I have a lot of people that say, man, I'm glad you could do that job because I couldn't do that. Well, one of the things that I do is I get medical examiner reports on a 1 to 2 week basis. And so I'll read these reports. Overwhelming majority of medical exam, they get called out for unnatural deaths. So automobile, you die in an automobile collision, or you die an unattended death. You might have had a heart attack, but you weren't in the care of a doctor, or it's a homicide or something like that, or, an overdose. Overwhelming percentage of deaths that I'm seeing in these medical examiners' reports are fentanyl, methamphetamine toxicity. Overwhelming. You would be shocked at the number of cases where I read this person had meth and fentanyl in their system. I don't think they're necessarily overdosing from meth. It's the fentanyl that's being added to it, but they can't, the doctors aren't going to differentiate it, but we know that fentanyl can, just basically shuts down your ability to breathe. It's destroying a segment of our population.
Yeah, what age group is it?
It's weirdly enough, I see a lot of 30 to 55s.
Really?
Right. But that's the population you were walking down the streets, right? Right. I mean, it's not. I mean, do kids have access to some of that stuff? Yes. I'm angry at the schools. I want the schools to be yesterday trying to educate these kids about not ingesting anything. And that's a whole nother topic. But I'm very frustrated with our big schools, our big Tulsa public schools. They need to be more proactive. It's so frustrating to me. We shut down our schools for COVID that I don't think killed, but maybe 2 kids in the state of Oklahoma who had core morbidities.
Yeah.
But we won't shut down our schools for the epidemic that is clearly killing children, right? It's a worse threat to our children. And so I'm trying to get these schools to say, would you allow us to come into your schools and talk to your kids for an hour? And they're like, well, we got to find a slot for that. And, we got all these other requirements for education. It was like, what good is it if the kid's dead, right? I mean, just stop it. But so that's a big challenge to us. But yeah, fentanyl is invading us, and it's terrible. And like we all know, it's bad, but that's, I tell people, it was like, you want to get the problem solved, make me dictator, because I would basically say, China, if there's one more ship that's coming from your borders to Mexico, it's going to be at the bottom of the sea. And Mexico, I'm giving you 30 days to clean up your drug manufacturing plants. And if you don't, then there's going to be manufacturing plants on. We have allowed that frickin' porous border and allowed two countries to take advantage of our problem. And it is our problem. And we've allowed a drug addiction culture to invade us, but we have foreign entities within our state. I mean, we have maybe 9 or 11 different nations, drug-oriented nations, or people from other nations here from 4 separate continents operating in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
4 continents.
Yeah, I mean,
China,
North, South, Asia, and Africa.
Strong, loving families.
Wait a minute. Africa. Who in Africa? I mean, where in Africa? Primarily, because that's a new one.
Well, I'm trying to think if I may have misspoke on that.
Okay.
Pardon me. I may have
Africa or India?
No, it's not India.
Okay.
Pardon me. I mean,
India's a subcontinent anyway, so I guess.
But they have a huge pharmaceutical industry in India.
Okay. I can't
that's
remember.
Fine.
I mean, talk with your OBN guys, but I remember them saying 4 continents, and part of me thinks it was Africa, but I can't tell you what. I don't know if it's like South Africa that there's this problem down in that in the Horn, or not the Horn, but down to that.
Yeah,
I feel like they're
most of your challenges come out of a lack of strong, loving families, proactive families. You talk about the parenting things. If they'd been properly trained as kids, most of them wouldn't be going the direction. That's my theory. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, I agree with that. But the problem is, I mean, I keep on going back to Judge Sontag, but, one point he had asked me was, brought to my attention is like, some of these people don't know what they don't know. They don't even know what they're doing is wrong. And if you think about it in that vein, we have girls who are getting pregnant at 15 who are becoming grandmas at 30 and great grandmas at 45.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what's their knowledge base as a mother at 15?
I understand. That's a multi-generational cultural breakdown.
Exactly. And so, if you're a single parent mom trying to raise a young boy and there's no man in there to kind of explain to him how to behave and what his responsibilities are to the family, and it's destroying the infrastructure of our country. Right? Our country is Judeo-Christian family oriented, and we're drifting from Judeo-Christian philosophies, and we're drifting from the idea that the core family is what makes this country great.
Sure. Yeah. So to me, that's part of it. Now, we have gone the other way. I mean, Corinth was a very hedonistic society.
Europe. Yeah.
How can we forget Europe?
Yeah, it's like
Europe. We're talking about fentanyl.
Yeah. No. It's because it's Russia, it's China, it's South America.
Right.
Yeah. But in Corinth, it was the influx of the church and Paul's teaching about marriage, and it just turned that very hedonistic society around. So we have, in centuries, millennia past, we've made impact. You're talking about now things are going the wrong way. It's just going to take a revival culturally.
Yeah, I mean, my wife Christine, one of the things she would like to see us do, and we should do it, is like there are so many people who don't even understand origins that we almost need the debate between the theologian. Let's just have that debate. And, the argument is, hey, within the Catholic faith, or within most faiths, I think now we're down to like 30%. Like 70% of people I'm hearing out there don't even have a religion, right? And so her argument, and I agree with her, is if we how nationally debate that issue, almost, I'd say, we'll make it a game show type thing where you just put these people up there, right? What's going to happen, right? I don't think the atheist is going to convert any of the 30% population. But I do believe the theologian will poll the people who are in the 70% crowd and they don't know what they don't know. There's a better opportunity for us if we just try to invade that territory. But what I see happening with faith is they just want to concentrate on their 30%. I was like, well, then you're not discipling, right?
Evangelizing.
Last words of Jesus, disciple, right? So you're not to disciple to the easy. You should go after the hard. Well, the hard right now is a population of people that don't even know that God exists or why they were created. So we should go to that population and say, I want to make your burden easier. Let me make it a lighter load. Educate them.
I was starting to bring up Kathy Costello's got a crisis. He's a good friend of your family's and mine. Her husband, the commissioner of labor, was murdered in her lap by their schizophrenic son, Christian. Christian was released from the state forensic psychiatric facility.
They're trying to. Have they stepped him down to a lesser? I don't think it's happened yet, but that's the threat. I think the report.
What I read is he got day passes.
Oh, okay. Well, but that's he's still a resident, but they're trying to step him down, which is bad because that's one of my issues with bureaucratic agencies is I call the forensic center the island of misfit toys. And it is. If you watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, it is that, right? I mean, it's just like, well, it's a broken toy. What do we do with them? We put them on an island and just ignore them.
Well, these are people still waiting for their miracle. The meds don't work for everybody.
Right. There's always going to be a percentage of the population that needs ultimately to be probably permanently protected.
A residential setting.
Right. But since we've ignored that facility for so many years by its leadership, they are choosing not to spend the money necessary to try and help step down certain people in a proper way. So what's happening is, my interpretation of this is, I think sometimes they get some people who are problem children. It's like, it's a whole lot easier. It's like, all right, we've just had enough of this guy, so let's just start moving them out. I don't think they were consulting with victim's family, Kathy's family, to say, hey, what's your interaction with him?
She told me her family's hard. Well, she's under death threats from her own son.
Right. And so that's the people who have oversight, not even listening to the people who have the best knowledge base about, hey, here are the things you should be doing. And they're not, in my opinion, actively providing treatment. I think their definition of treatment is give somebody meds and not dive into, what's the distorted thought that got you here, right?
Yeah, but we've got people there who they've turned into experimental monkeys because nothing's worked, and they, in their desperation, have done even more harm. Their intent was correct.
Yeah, no.
But we just have people that, they're still waiting for their miracle.
Yeah.
And they did not, just like your daughter, they did not choose this.
Yeah. When my daughter went there, this is the one thing that jumped out to me was, and Jenny got to a really good spot and is doing great.
Correct.
But she's like, Dad, there's some people in here who are in wheelchairs. And she's like, I don't understand why we have people in this facility who are in wheelchairs. I mean, who are they going to hurt? I'm like, that's a dang good question. Who are they going to hurt? Right?
Gene Stipe died there.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, it's like, what is the plan? Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's that facility, but then I want to know, well, what are the step downs? Right. I mean, because hospitalization is the most expensive, you ought to be aiming towards reducing that financial burden. You, the libertarian, right? Me, the conservatives, like, I don't want to be throwing a lot of money at stuff. But so what's the step down look like, and can you manage it in such a way that makes it safe? I don't think they've given thought to that for the last 25 years. I literally don't think they've given any thought. I think it's just like Island Misfit Toys and let's just, because there's not a lot of people paying attention to it, right?
Well, it doesn't matter how libertarian your views are. Every society has to have a public mental health facility. Even Adolf Hitler had to deal with it. Now, gas chambers were the way he dealt with it. We are not those people.
Right.
We are going to have to spend money.
Right.
And we're not. Let's talk about the origins. My understanding, and you're the legal expert here, it was a 1979 Supreme Court ruling that said a person has a right to be mentally ill unless they're creating a danger to others or themselves. And Ronald Reagan said that's where homelessness came from largely, was we had to let these people out.
Well, I take it even further back. So President Kennedy had a sister. It was actually the last bill signed by his
eldest sister.
Yeah. And so I don't know what her illness was, but ended up having a lobotomy.
Yeah. Dad.
And then had, difficulties, right? Well, there wasn't really any, you had these asylums that were probably not designed for somebody like her needs. Yet that's what she would have been relegated to. And so they created these, what they called community mental health based centers. It
was more of a theory on paper than a reality. Yeah.
Good vision, bad in implementation.
Yes.
And so, I think there should have been a better balancing of it. They made this concept or this construct that said basically let's get them all out of this environment because we can do it better in a local community. Well, no, not necessarily.
Not everybody.
And it didn't contemplate the impact of radical drugs and destroying and frying people's brains and all that. I mean, we got so many different strata of mental illness impacted by traumatic brain injuries, by ingestion of certain drugs. And then we also have the benefits of some drugs actually are able to intercept some of that paranoia or remove it from you. So, we're moving, but we went all or nothing, and there should be a better compromise, in my opinion. There's a certain population we should always expect probably they're just going to need to be institutionalized, and it's sad for them, but they're going to hurt themselves or other people are going to hurt them
until their miracle arrives.
Right.
Whether it's a miracle drug or other thing.
Right. Yeah. There's always hope. So, yeah, I mean, it goes back basically to the Kennedy days, and I think we need to kind of re-examine that and say, all right, what is the point of some place like the Oklahoma Forensic Center, and what are we supposed to be accomplishing in that facility, and then what do we have out in the community if there's ever going to be some step down?
Yeah.
And it's gotten to this all or nothing dynamic, and that's what I'm objecting to.
Yeah. And the pharmaceuticals tried to sell us this thing. Oh, we're going to fix everything. All you need is a pill. And to Eddie's point, sometimes 2 weeks is enough of intervention instead of 90 days in the county jail. And sometimes it may not. We don't want to overpromise.
So, yeah, you and I've talked a little bit about this in the past, and this is one of the things that I've learned is for people who are dealing, let's just say you got somebody that's watching right now and they're just now beginning to see that their son or their daughter may have some mental health issue, right? And you get this illusion to say, well, if I can just get them into a mental health facility and get them stabilized, then things will get better. Well, stabilization is not treatment. I mean, it is terrible. They'll go in full on delusional, paranoid behaviors. The docs there, all they're doing is like, I got to get you off of this crazy paranoid delusion. So they give you lithium or whatever the heck it is. And as soon as they get them medically stabilized, then they're like, okay, yeah, you do have some issues, but you're safe enough. You're not going to hurt yourself or somebody else, because you can articulate that, and then they'll discharge you. And then they'll say, here's a piece of paper and you need to go to this facility, and you show up at that facility to get your meds. And then they'll say, well, we got a counselor lined up for you in 45 days.
45 days.
Never going. I mean, you know. And so the next intercept point for us, I think you and I, is to try and mandate that we ought to have day-to-day outpatient tracking for a minimum of 90 days with some court oversight to that, because that patient needs that. And then if you can track the medication, and now they've gotten to an adequate outpatient stabilization and they develop some resources in the community, then you're not going to have this repeat visiting or zombies walking down the street, which is what we're seeing.
And not only do these mental hospitals invest nothing in the family involved in them, oftentimes they flat out refuse it. HEPA laws don't allow me to talk to you.
So, yeah, I agree with that too, because on the extreme cases where, like under the Christian Costello case or any of those other cases, you know, when that mentally ill person kills another human being, oftentimes it's a family member. And so, you know, imagine killing your mom or your dad, right? Or you kill a sibling. There's going to be nobody in the family that's going to say, well, let's go visit Bob because he killed mom. They're done. So then they're ostracized from whatever support system they have. And then while they're out there, because they're ostracized, you know, well, what resources are external resources are going to be provided to them? So here's a sad aspect about this. If you go into the forensic center, every 3 months, they have a bit of a rotation there. You're there, your first 3 months, hey, we'll let you get some toiletries and personal effect items, right? Well, who's delivering that if your family has cut you off? Yeah. And then the next 3 months, hey, you can get some new clothes. Well, who's going to get you new clothes, right? And so what my daughter would talk about is, you know, some of these people are wearing clothes that have been hand-me-downs from within the institution. You know, my wife and I were bringing Jenny nice clothes because I know that clothes would make her feel better, right? So one of the things I'm trying to work on with the Catholic crowd is, well, why can't we just set up you know, with Catholic Charities, I think, has a warehouse of clothes or whatever. It's like, why couldn't we just do that and let them, you know, pick their own clothes a little more frequently? Another thing she talked about, I mean, she's like, man, it'd be nice to have some ice cream once in a while. Right. And some of these people get medically stabilized, but you know, you got to earn points, or you got to have somebody put money on your commissary account. Okay. Well, if you've been ostracized by your family, is anybody putting money on your account so you can get a drumstick or whatever, or a ice cream sandwich? Some people, you know, Jenny would be able to get herself a nice little ding dong or a Twinkie or something like that. And then there's somebody that's been in there for 20 years. And I was like, well, what about your friend Mary? Nobody puts money in her books. Nobody gives her clothes. She's wearing the same clothes she's been wearing for the last year. I mean, what are we doing? That's my question. So, I mean, it's so deeply flawed because of the abandonment over the last 25 years that I've encouraged new administrators. I was like, if I were you, I'd just say, all right, let's just pretend we today just learned we have mental illness in Oklahoma. What would you rebuild, or what would you build? Don't even think about working within the system. How would you envision it where it's actually going to function in a better way? Yeah.
And I have to say, in Keating's last years, they restructured the entire Department of Mental Health. Section 43A of the state code, completely redone. Some good innovations, some horrible changes. And I told the legislature when I called, had an interim study on this, I said, you guys need to revisit this, have another panel and fix some of the problems. Because you and I both know we've had problems with Department of Mental Health.
So, I mean, this get people angry at me, but I just, at the end of the day, I get so angry, David and Eddie. I get so angry at legislators, because they're not doing their job and they're not looking at the problem on the street. And, I had, when we engaged in this mental health issue, and I don't want this to dominate the whole conversation, but I had legislators, I was complaining about what was going on. I had legislators come up and was like, hey, would you just write something out and I'll get that piece of law passed. And I was like, do you think I don't have a full-time job? I'm the district attorney in Tulsa County. And so I'm trying to put people who are beating their wives or girlfriends within an inch of their life, or I have people trying to burn down buildings or whatever. You want me to write your law?
Yeah.
I was like, how about you watch the streets? And then how about you go talk to a cop or an EMSA worker or a fire department worker or a mental health person and ask them what they would like to have done. And then how about you write a paragraph of here's the problem and this might be a proposed law. And you bring me the words and then I'll help you tweak it so it looks like it'll be something worthy of whatever. And then you're personally invested in it. We have legislators right now who go down there and they think that they got down there because of their dang brain. You remember when Glenn Youngkin got elected in Virginia? You remember the other dude that got elected that night that was kind of like a big surprise? So I think the most senior state senator in New Jersey got knocked off by a truck driver. Oh. And I think it was
in New York, actually.
Or was it New York? I thought it was New Jersey or New York. Whatever it was.
It was in New York, yeah.
It was...
But yeah, I know.
Fruits and nuts.
I do remember that.
Right. Yeah, right. And so I think the story was he only spent like $6,000 or $8,000 to run his campaign, right? So I think the next night he was on Tucker Carlson's program, and I think it might have been Tucker that says, "Well, what this is quite an accomplishment. You're now an elected leader. I'm really interested in what you're going to do." And that truck driver said, I am not a leader. I'm an elected representative. I am not somebody who's an official or a leader. I'm a representative of my community. And that's what's missing down there is people aren't listening to their community and developing solutions. And so you get a whole bunch of people down there that think that they got elected for their brain. No, they got elected to represent. And I had a great amount of respect for that because what I feel we see a lot of people doing when they're going down to the legislature is they're not even doing the fundamentals of what is the issue in my community that needs to be addressed. And can I see that? They want other people to hand them stuff and then they can just rubber stamp it and get their picture and put it up on Facebook and say, here I am, look what I did. I got this law passed. It's like, no, if you're personally invested in the process of building the law, then you're actually going to be a prolific advocate on behalf of it. And I don't know that we get that kind of advocacy anymore. I think everybody is just herding cattle. They are.
They're getting money from. Yeah, the lobbyists in Washington create their narratives once they get elected, largely.
Because it's become a job. It's not a public service, right? It's back to my point earlier. It's like, are you a politician or are you a public servant?
Yeah.
What do you see as the major crime issues facing Tulsa what help can you get from the city?
All right. So, interestingly enough, domestic violence is a bit of a scourge.
Really?
Yeah. I learned here recently, I'm whether it's 40 or 60%, either percentage is horrific, but I believe it was 60% of all calls on a daily basis with the Tulsa Police Department involve some aspect of domestic violence, protective orders, something domestic related. So that's a huge drain on the resources is, hey, we're responding to that. Mayor Bynum created this commission to address that. And it wasn't, I don't know if it was necessarily because of the volume of calls, but Oklahoma also is pretty high on the list of states in which we have domestic related homicides. Mm-hmm. There's something we need to be spending some time on that because obviously what we have been trying to do over the last several years is not working. We're missing something there.
Well, you're a victim of domestic violence.
Well, I don't know that I would say that. I would say that, with my daughter, it was her mental illness.
It was domestic and it was violent.
Well, so I don't know if you know the story, but the story was she had stabbed herself 4 times before I made contact with her. Right. And if I had not made contact with her, she'd been dead. Yes. So I will gladly, 100 times out of 100,
absolutely
intervene myself in somebody who's attempting to kill themselves. Yeah. Most people have it backwards. It was, I usually tell people, it's like, it wasn't a murder-suicide.
Let's stick to the original question about crime.
Yeah. So the something's going on that we really need to spend some effort towards analyzing that, and I think the mayor is rightfully trying to look at that. There is a bit of an intersection that I'm seeing from some of the criminal justice reform crowd that are trying to get in there and say, well, even domestic abusers are victims, right? I'm like, stop it.
Goodness.
Right, stop it, right? I mean, everybody's a victim these days, and it's very frustrating for me to have to try and address that. So we're looking at that. I still go back to the drug issue. That fuels a lot of things.
And alcohol.
The Tulsa Police Department and the Sheriff's Office, one of the things I think that Tulsa does, and we should never view that Tulsa is somehow overridden by crime. I do think we have a bad homeless drug problem, especially in certain areas of town, that it's wearing on those business owners, and we need to help address that. And I'm working on that. That was another thing that kind of shocked me. I had a downtown businessman who, was expressing frustration about people vandalizing his businesses and, trespassing in his businesses or whatever. And he encouraged me to kind of take another look at that. And I was like, well, a lot of that stuff is municipal stuff. It's the city courts, not me. And he didn't care. He's just like, no, you're a guy who's the DA. You need to play a role in trying to solve this. So what I did is I ran stats on homeless or the transients or whatever, and it shocked me the huge stack of crimes from like October to December where the police department listed transient as the address. I'm like, okay, that is a problem, because that shouldn't be the excuse, right? Oh, well, hey, I'm homeless. Oh, well, hey, I'm transient. That's not a authorization to commit crime. So, I'm trying to get the word out to whoever's going to listen, is like, I'm not going to allow your transientness to be some excuse to get a get out of jail free card. You commit a crime, we're going to hold you accountable. But back to where I think we're doing really well with Wendell Franklin, Chief Franklin. They implemented a gun crime unit, and what they have recognized is, hey, if you got a gun and you're committing a crime, there's a higher likelihood that gun's going to be associated with violence. So they have targeted people who are committing crimes with a gun, and we're trying to pull those people off streets. Interestingly enough, we've seen a decrease in the number of homicides. We're seeing a decrease in the number of shootings. Another area that, however, is a problem, and it's especially with the McGirt decision, the Indian reservation decision, is there's a huge void in the juvenile offenses. So the federal court system is not set up to handle Indian offenders who are committing crimes under the age of 18. Yeah. State court systems are set up for that, have always been set up for that. So we're seeing a fairly significant increase in violent crimes committed by people under the age of 18.
Who are Native American.
Who could be Native American, but also just even non-Native American. That is getting our attention as well. I am going to be paying attention to what these kids are out there doing when they're committing a crime. I mean, if they're committing a crime, I'm going to be, to your point, like, where are you, mom or dad?
Yeah.
It's after 10, there's a curfew in Tulsa, and your kid's out there committing a crime. What's your excuse for your kid to be out there? I may be going after some of these parents for child neglect or contributing to delinquency of minors. They're not gonna monitor their own kids. So
we had a major crisis a year ago this weekend. Power knocked out the whole city, right? We had Joe Krylishek in a couple of weeks later. One of the things that I have to say positively about Tulsa, we didn't have a rash of crime.
Right.
With a great opportunity, but it didn't happen. Let's go back another 3 years. June of 2020, we had some instigators from Antifa come in and join some protests and take it further than most of those people
took over a highway, right? Is that
highway, Brookside, Woodland Hills Mall?
Right.
It got violent. It got damaging. And I looked at some of the people arrested. They come in here from California. How did you deal with that back in 2020?
So, that was really interesting because it was, when that trucker was, or the guy who was driving the horse trailer, right? It was a fascinating situation to look through the investigation from the Highway Patrol. After I wrote my memo and I exonerated the horseman, the horse driver, was to kind of point out, okay, one, you don't get the right to be on a highway as a pedestrian.
Yes. There are statutory laws.
There's a law that prohibits you from doing that. And there are laws prohibiting you from throwing stuff at vehicles. And there are laws against you trying to assault people on it. And now all of that was taking place with regard to that driver and his family. And some of the things that I saw in the videos and still shots were, there was one guy who wearing his mask, right? It's Father's Day. I don't know why you have to wear a mask. It's frickin' 80 or 85 degrees outside. It's not there for your warmth. It's there to conceal your identity. But taking an asp, which is an extended metal baton, and literally beating on the windows of the side of this truck, trying to get access to the back doors where his kids were in the back seat on the floorboard. My reaction was, obviously, I'm not going to hold that guy accountable, but I did invite the public as I would like to know who this guy was. And I'd like to know who this person was, because there's some kid with a frickin' skateboard who was whacking the window. There was somebody that threw a smoke bomb right over the top of the horse trailer. I invited the public. Of course, it was all those people within that crowd that knew who those people were and could have turned their friends in, but they weren't there for peaceful protests. They were there for anarchy. They were there to disrupt the rule of law. And why it doesn't work so well in Tulsa is our community kind of is a rule of law community. And
right. So one of your employees was there. I talked to her. Tulsa police handled parking for that rally. I'm talking about the rally at the UCAT,
John
the college
Franklin.
facility. Right. And the director, nice young lady, young black lady, she got sick, had to go home. There was a little bit of a void of leadership. And then there were just some people that just said, no, we are not taking the path on the surface streets. We're going up here.
Right.
And it just takes a few agitators.
Right. Because they saw it on TV. You at that time with the George Floyd protests, oh, look what they're doing in Los Angeles. They're shutting down streets, right?
Minneapolis, I-35.
Right, It's okay, well, good luck. Good luck. It didn't work out so well.
This isn't Minneapolis or...
Oh, we have a guy paralyzed, fell off of the bridge that day.
Right.
So...
what was he doing up there?
Yeah, exactly. Some people can be easily led, And I want to highly recommend to you, Dr. Phil has a podcast. He had Andy Ngo on this morning. I was watching for an hour. Yeah. And Andy Ngo, it's called Antifa and Mask. Mm-hmm. And as a prosecutor, you really need to see this.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're tolerating way too much of this. Hey, you get to mask up and pretend like you're that
peaceful protester.
Well, I mean, in Oklahoma, we specifically have a statute that prohibits you from wearing a mask during the commission of a crime, right? And that goes back to going into a bank and robbing it, right? You pull up your little bandana and conceal your face. Well, it's not for health purposes anymore. This is all for concealment of your identity because you're up to no good. Mm-hmm. And of course, what they'll say is, well, I don't want my political views being associated with my face, so it might affect my employment. I'm like, maybe it should affect your employment.
Yeah.
Remember Senator Barrington had that bill that we mocked. We called it the hoodie bill. Bill O'Reilly that made it illegal to conceal your face in public. Mm-hmm. He tried to get it passed. He was head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And that was 2014, 15, 16, something like that. Mm-hmm. To go from that to where mandated you must wear a mask. I got kicked out of the Tulsa library because even though I was wearing a full face shield, no, that's not on our approved list. You need to go get a mask or leave. Wow. We did a 180 on this,
So in wrapping up, is there anything specific that you would like to say, and especially to a broader audience? You're welcome to anything that we haven't covered that has been on your heart.
Well, I've touched on it a couple of times. I mean, this is a very challenging time, in my opinion, for our country, but it is opportunity I never want to quote Rahm Emanuel, but we should be taking advantage of the crisis in our country to be showing the public that there is hope, that there is opportunity in God. There is the opportunity to change our ways. We're not lost. God doesn't want us to be lost. He wants us to be in communion with Him, and that's what we're all called to be. So don't shy away from the opportunity. I get excited by difficult times because it gives me something to get out of my chair and be proactive about and try and say, hey, it's not as bad as it seems. Just ride with me. I'll help you get through this fear that you have that's going on in your life. I don't think God that person, pours seed that's uniquely planted on their soul and only their soul, and they should be pouring water. And to get those people to recognize that and not be so distracted by all the things that are out there that's trying to say, hey, you're not as good a person as you think you are. We all have the opportunity to be problem solvers in our community. And that's what I try and encourage with my staff. And it's what I try and encourage with my community. I would like a lot more involvement from my church community. I think the timing is right that, you said revival, or maybe you said time for a revival. The church community, in my opinion, should step up and should be more proactive in trying to help out these lost lambs. I don't think the lambs got lost on their own. I think they intentionally got themselves lost because they don't feel like they belong to the flock. So how do you rescue the lost lamb? You find a way to say, hey, I'm sorry you walked away from us. We didn't lose you. You lost because you didn't think you belonged with us. Well, you do belong with us, and let's show you why you belong with us. You may feel like you made a mistake. That doesn't mean you're rejected.
So important.
So that's how.
So important, particularly when people go on parole after, or what is it? Probation, after time served, what do you call it?
Yeah, probation.
Probation. That's a time for the church to embrace.
I agree.
Find a job within, find a business in that church. Make it.
Yeah, see, what I say is, we have prison ministries. I was like, I wish we had probation ministries, because those are the days where we really should. I mean, we ought to have the front row in the courtroom with church communities. And because it's sad, I see people who are sentenced, and I use the example, the UPS driver who picks up a DUI. What must that be like for that guy, right? he gets arrested. That's embarrassing. He's put in jail. What's the first thing he's going to do? He's probably going to have to call home to his wife and say he's not coming home. And he's got to wonder what the wife's going to say to the kids. And then at some point, he's going to know his mugshot's going to be on some poster somewhere. And then he's probably going to lose his job. And then it's going to cost a lot of money and affect his livelihood for his family. And, ultimately he'll get through all that. But it's that guy who is wearing what I call the invisible scarlet letter. Back in the day, you had to embroider an A for adultery. But I think these guys and gals wear an invisible scarlet letter, and they label themselves as being unworthy. And I literally watch them walk out of courtrooms, and they don't have mom or dad or brother or sister. They're there with their defense attorney, and everybody's giving them some kind of disposition. And I can only do what I can do to encourage him to just clean up his act. But that's the opportunity for the probation ministry to walk up as they're walking out of the courtroom and say, hey, buddy, what's going on? Because there's a reason the guy chose to drink, right? Why were you drinking? Is there problems at home, or is there problems with you? Or is there, is something going on that you're trying to deal with? And that's where the ministry could come in and be that safety net and say, hey, I'm here to help you overcome this idea that you're not as worthy as you are. You made a mistake. Let's figure out how to rehabilitate you in those moments. And unfortunately, it's those guys and gals that if they feel like nobody cares about them, then they get a divorce, or they get separated from their kids, or now it's like, well, I guess I'll just have another beer, or I'll do something else with the drug, and then they cycle down into the point where they go to prison. So I'd love to have a probation ministry, but that takes a united church. I know we have a lot of denominations, but we all could unite around that.
Right.
That right there, Eddie, that last statement. If you get nothing else, you don't get a chance to say that most of your press conferences, most of your courthouse things. But that is so important, especially coming from you, Mr. Law and Order, Mr. Enforcer. That grace, that redemption message. Thank you for saying that.
Sure.
I got through half of what I wanted to talk about today. You got to come back.
That's what we want to have him back. We'll
fine,
make this regular thing. That'd be good. So, hey, Steve, thank you very much.
You bet.
And seriously, we really appreciate it. This was a good one, and we hope you do break our record and increase the viewership.
I do. Kevin's a dear friend and a believer and passionate about his faith. And I just really like to talk to attorneys to show that they're real human. Oh, I know. And some of them have integrity.
And it's good to show both sides. Yeah. The defense and the prosecution.
I will end it with this. The road to hell is paved with attorneys. I am really hard on attorneys because we are abandoning our calling. We're supposed to guide people to adhere to the rule of law, and we're using it as an opportunity to beat somebody. It's like, no, we're supposed to make our community better. And I hate that.
Yeah. Next visit, let's talk about, there's reforms need to happen. I think bar association issues, all kinds of things.
Right. All right, David, we are black again.
That's good.
At least one of us is. Hey, boy, that was good.
Kunzweiler.
Yes. I enjoyed it immensely. And Steve's been a good friend. We've been on the opposite sides of positions a few times.
Yes.
But that's good. I mean, that shows true friendship, and he's a good guy. And he's like me. He likes to talk, and he's strong in his positions. Mm-hmm. And I love that. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how you and I became friends, because we argued, and we're still friends because we disagree quite a bit. I think some people don't understand that. My wife, it's funny. My wife has such a hard time with that, because I disagree with people sometimes, and she doesn't think I should be disagreeing with people. What do you mean? I mean, what? You shouldn't be so argumentative. I said, no, this is how think of the Apostle Paul on Mars Hill, right? What was he doing? He was speaking with the philosophers at Mars Hill.
Yeah.
As a Christian, you're disagreeing with most of the world a lot of the time, right?
Sure.
Jesus disagreed with those who, especially the Pharisees and everybody else who was an unbeliever. So, but to me, when I disagree, it doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't mean I don't like you. I don't care about you. It doesn't mean I'm not listening. And in fact, often like what I would do, how you and I met, as you know, and you, I think, figured out, I was challenging you. I was pulling out of you what's really there. I was teasing.
That's what you were doing. You're egging me on.
I was egging you up, poking the bear. Yeah, in your case, yeah. And I would see how far I could go before you figured it out. And sometimes, let me give you an example. There was a former well-known Christian singer. I don't want to put his name out there and make him feel bad or anything. But he was popular back in the late 80s. And he's become pretty liberal right now. And anyway, and he hates Donald Trump. Literally, he's obsessed with Donald Trump. Okay, and he's got all these people on his Facebook page. And so he showed up on mine for some reason. And so I started discussing and arguing, but he's always got these nasty things against Donald Trump. And so he put this one, and it's a C.S. Lewis quote, which is really taken out of context to try to come against Donald Trump. And I knew what he was trying to do, his reason for doing. So I honed in on this thing. And then he tried to accuse me of, this had nothing to do with Trump. I said, come on, at least be honest. You know why you put this on there. Because all of the posts for people supporting his position, they were all chiming in about Donald Trump. So how can it not be about Donald Trump? If all of these people got the same impression. Well, anyway, I went the other way. And it's interesting. This is a Christian what would you call it? Facebook group, I guess, or I say Christian. I'll say it's Christians. And I honestly believe, because I'm not going to question anybody's faith. I just believe these are believers that may be confused about certain things. But they've been convinced that to be hard-edged about certain things makes you the devil or something, And so I take these people on, and there's a few people in there that take my side or whatever, but most of them, don't take kindly to me questioning. That's the thing. I like to question.
I have to say, I've got my kids had a youth pastor when my oldest first in middle school years. And unfortunately, one of the struggles that youth pastor had is he equated agreement with love. He even put it in this big paper because he was trying to push this new concept of courtship. Kids shouldn't date. They should follow the structure that very much is a parental arranged kind of thing. And anyway, and he prefaces, he says, there are those of you who love me and accept my teaching and da-da-da. And then there's those of you who, are not yet ready to commit to it and da-da-da. And he had a bunch of us parents in the room as well as the kids. And I stood up. I said, you notice you said you put us in 3 categories, and one of them said we love you. The other 2 didn't say anything about we love you, Pastor. Why are you equating agreeing with your teaching on this, which is a very novel philosophy that's an amalgamation of multiple cultures over multiple millennia, all amalgamated into one thing, because courtship is great for middle school. right? When they shouldn't be dating, in my opinion, anyway.
Right.
But he was trying to get us parents to enforce his philosophy. But the problem this guy had, which is really an inner struggle he had, is if you disagreed with him, he took it as personal rejection.
Right. And see, and that's the thing with these for example, when I attacked you, you know, and to me, it wasn't really an attack. It was more of a questioning or a counterpoint to yours. You didn't take it as an offense. You just
It was
came
an
back.
invitation. It was a challenge.
It was exactly. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
It was a feast.
Right. Yeah. And an invitation to a feast. And I saw the same. And that's what I saw on this thing.
Yeah.
An opportunity to sharpen my iron.
Yeah.
But these people, it's like they go nuts.
Yeah.
But
you were kind to me because you gave me a very, very easy thing to discredit you with.
Right.
Because eventually the Maybe Center announced the official attendance and that they had shut it off because a week earlier, Donald Trump agreed to rent it in that format with no more than so many people there.
Right. But that didn't stop me.
Exactly. Yeah. You were on a fool's errand, Eddie.
Right. Well, a wise fool, which is a sophomore.
Yeah.
That's a sophomore.
How many times have we gotten into this?
No, I know. We want our audience to be fully aware of it.
Yeah.
No. But like I said, I kept going, and I started adding into people in the parking, that didn't get into the
stadium.
The people that didn't get into
That's
the stadium.
That's what Donald Trump told Greta, that it was a stadium.
Yeah, the people that didn't get into the ORU stadium, right? Those people. But anyway, so that's what happened this week with the getting into it with these people, and it's just interesting that. But so that's what I enjoy about the friendship with Steve and you. That's the best kind of friends to have, that you can argue with, and it's almost like brothers, that'll wrestle and fight and get into stuff, but in the end, you still know you can trust these people. I mean, in the end, that's what it gets down to. We don't agree on everything, because you have people that will agree, or as the old saying, the yes man, always agreeing. See, this is what got Donald Trump into issues, in the fact that he would have all these people that agreed with him all the time, or acted like they did, and then just stabbed him in the back.
Yeah.
Particularly, the final Brutus was Mike Pence, which is the ultimate betrayal, which is just sad. I mean, honestly, to me, it's the saddest thing in the world to see what happened to Mike Pence. Yeah. The way he did that. It would be better to say nothing and suffer at whatever hands and thoughts the other side might have, than to take the side and of betrayal. And which leads me to something else. And I think we may have discussed this last week or a week before, and that is the two people that, to me, he savaged. Yeah, we did talk about it before. The two people he savaged the most in the campaign in 2016, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, right, are two of the most loyal and staunch advocates and supporters of Donald Trump. I mean, it's really interesting how things have turned around, that those two have, and it's not like he turned around and begged for their forgiveness or begged them to change they just did it on their own. I mean, it's really stunning to see that. And I may have talked about it before, but I have, and I've written it several times online, that I believe Marco Rubio is going to be his vice presidential pick. Yes. Now, you told me something earlier, though, that there may be a problem with Marco.
I don't know that I said so much as that.
No, about the state.
Oh, yes. Some states, this is in state law. Remember, when you vote for president and vice president, you're voting for electors. But the certain states stipulate that the president and vice president electors cannot be from the same state. And Florida being one of those. But the Florida legislature is set to address that if need be.
It's a stupid rule to me. I mean, I don't know why you would have that rule, but no, I mean, if they have it, okay. But so if they both came from Idaho, it would still be a rule.
Evidently.
But what's funny, it's funny that it comes back to bite them because they're both from their state. You know?
Yeah.
That's really, now are they?
Yeah, we're okay with it if it's our state.
Yeah, that's why they're changing the law. Are they the only state that has this?
Well, yeah. I mean, this came about largely from states who used to, I mean, Florida used to be a poor state and used to be not very populated until, the tourism industry came in. But when you had mammoth states populously like New York, you didn't want
Now I understand. That's true, because then everything could be geared towards that one.
Yeah.
So, okay, I understand. So actually it makes sense. It makes sense because they could make laws and everything to benefit just that one.
Yeah, and for decades, you would hear the commentators talk about, when I was a kid, about balancing the ticket. Whatever you're weakest in, you find a running mate that addresses it.
Right. The problem is Oklahoma, for example, which has been the strongest Republican state in the nation, is not going to bring a lot of electoral votes.
That's true.
And or South Dakota.
Not geographically, but if it addresses a segment.
Right.
Right.
But it's just the electorally speaking, it just doesn't do a lot for you, to bring the South Dakota or Oklahoma vice president,
But if you're, say, John Kennedy from New England, having a Southern Democrat brought balance, and it was crucial that he win Texas.
Right, but then again, Texas always brought a lot more electoral votes than did Oklahoma or South Dakota.
It did, but it wasn't nearly as big as it is now. This was 60 years ago.
Right, but it was still quite a bit bigger. It was. It was on par with a lot of your other states. It was probably on par even then with New York or...
No, it was way below California. Now it's bigger than California.
Right. Well, maybe California, but it was at least on par with, say, 48, 47, 48.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Whereas Oklahoma has never been on par with those. You want to be at least on par. For example, Florida is still not on par with California. I mean, who is? And in fact, this is the thing that we've just learned, or I've just learned. I was trying to figure out, why would they be moving all these immigrants to New York, to California, Illinois? And then it hit me, the census is counting these people for the population, which allows them to have replaced those electoral votes they lost from all of the people moving to Texas and Florida and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So all of the red states have been picking up the electoral votes, and they're replacing those votes now with illegal, I'll say it, immigrants.
Yeah. Southern Democrats, I name Johnson running for president and Carter, both times picked a Minnesota guy. Minnesota isn't that much bigger than Oklahoma.
Really?
But it represents the Great Lakes. And, that culture. When you're a Southerner, you want something Northern.
Right. The problem is Oklahoma's not.
You're right.
Southern or Northern.
So I'm just saying, it's not the size of the state if it taps into something bigger than its size.
Right. But unfortunately, most of them don't.
Yeah.
Now, Florida, it stands alone California, of course, stands alone. New York, those states. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I think Marco Rubio would be a great pick. He's a very sharp guy, as I said before. If you've watched our earlier show, just he's become really adept at giving interviews. I mean, the guy's just good. He's good.
I want to address something. People are nervous right now that this race for president could turn into a landslide for Trump.
Why are they nervous? Or are you talking
I'm
about
saying the establishment left.
Yeah, right.
Very nervous. And I looked at 1980. That's when you had a very bad Democrat incumbent and a very strong leader, Republican. Ronald Reagan ended up taking 44 of the 50 states in 1980. I was not aware it was that big of a landslide. So much so, I remember watching a recreation movie of the Reagan campaign. It's middle of the afternoon, and he's in his bedroom, and Reagan gets a call, and it's Jimmy Carter conceding in the middle of the afternoon of election day.
Afternoon.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Ronald Reagan had just gone to do a photo op voting at his precinct, came back and he was dressing and going to run down to the ballroom for their big election night watch party. Yeah. And he turns to Nancy, and it's just the two of them there. There ain't even anybody around.
What's funny to me is was really telling. I happened to watch Saturday Night Live. I wasn't a follower of Saturday Night Live, but I was visiting somebody, and they had it on, and there was a skit that. Do you remember the Invasion of the Body Snatchers? Did you ever see that movie?
No, I didn't.
Okay, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. These aliens came in, and they would take these bean pods, and somehow they put it in somebody's house. And I don't know how I did it, but the bean pods would take over the people.
Wow.
And then out of the bean pod, the people would come out, clones, I guess. I don't know what happened to the original. They never explained what happened to the original people, but it would be aliens. But they would be totally different from but the people, nobody could tell.
Oh.
And then those people would come, and then they would put the bean pods in other people's houses and so forth, So anyway, Saturday Night Live did this skit where these Jimmy Carter really rabid Democrats, and and then Bob and Jane came over to visit. Hey, how are you doing? Oh yeah, we're doing good. And they were telling me, are you ready for the election? Yeah, we're ready. And yeah, you ready for Jimmy? Well, we've kind of rethunk it. We think we're going for Reagan this time. I said, what? What's
Oh wow.
And so anyway, oh yeah, we brought you these gifts for your house, and they bring in these bean pods, they stick them over here, and then and then after they leave, they say, what happened to them? They used to be, they were total anarchists and this and that. They were so gung ho. I remember, they were there in Chicago, at the Chicago riots, and I don't know what's going on, but anyway, it was showing that there must be invasion of the body snatchers going on to make all these people, because this must have been, it was in 80, because in November of 80 is when they elected Reagan. So anyway, but they already knew that Carter was going to lose.
Yeah.
But when Saturday Night Live was, because everybody was switching to Reagan, for some reason. So maybe we'll see another Saturday Night Live skit like that. But But anyway, But Marco, like I said, I think Marco Rubio is he's my pick.
One other person that's kind of on par with Marco and a lot of people is J.D. Vance.
Yeah, J.D. Okay. 2 knocks against JD. I would love to see JD.
Yeah, you were the first rah-rah JD I ever met.
No, for Senate, I would love, and I would love him as a person. My problem with JD is nothing with his person or his qualification. His only knocks are this is still his first term in the Senate. Secondly, he's not Hispanic.
Yeah.
See, Marco checks.
Racist.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm just going to call it like it is. We are living in a world where race matters. Sorry, race matters. And if you're going to have, here's how I look at it. All things being equal, okay, and I think Marco is as, if not more qualified than all of the other candidates. If you're going to have that, then let's put Hispanic, elect the first Hispanic vice president. In other words, all things being equal, see, if they had said all things being equal and you got a black candidate for president, Barack Obama, then I would say, yeah, okay, I'm fine. But just to put a guy that spent a couple of years in Congress, spent half a term as a senator, and then all of a sudden you're going to make him president.
It sounds like Barack Obama.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to take a guy like that and to do that, no, that's not.
That was also John F. Kennedy.
Was it? As a Catholic?
First term in the Senate.
Okay.
And he got elected.
How long had he been in Congress?
It couldn't have been more than like 4 years max.
Why couldn't it have been?
Well,
wait, more than 4 years?
I think maybe 4 years in Congress.
Okay.
In the House, and then he was in his first term in the Senate.
Okay, Obama did 2 years in the House, and a half a term.
Actually, Obama went straight from the State House to the U.S. House or U.S. Senate.
Oh, even more reason he shouldn't have been president. Right. Yeah. So totally shouldn't have been there, qualification wise. But what I'm saying is, that's what I'm saying. If you take all things equal, then it's not affirmative action necessarily. It's just saying, okay, we've never had a Hispanic president. Let's get a Hispanic president. And with all things equal.
And you and I both agree philosophically, it shouldn't matter.
No, it shouldn't. That's what I'm saying. It shouldn't matter. But when you have a huge population which is Hispanic, then, and if Marco, I have to confess, I just like Marco Rubio. That's probably the biggest reason. If Marco weren't, but see, I like him because to me, he's the most qualified. I mean, I can't find any reason why he shouldn't be it. Okay. He was in the state legislature in Florida. Yeah. And then
he was Speaker of the House in Florida.
Right. And then he went, I guess he was in Congress. He was a regular U.S. rep.
If I could, before, he was on the Miami City Council. So he's got municipal government, state government, and federal government.
Right. So this guy is not only as qualified, he's more qualified than a lot of guys that are in Washington right now.
I would agree on that.
Do I need to say Ocasio-Cortez?
Okay, yeah. I do want to say one thing. The fact that he grew up immersed in a Hispanic and Cuban culture. And by the way, Cubans don't want to be called Hispanic. Okay. But he speaks the language.
Right.
That is a pragmatic, objective skill and quality, especially in international relations.
Yeah.
We should be doing better in our own hemisphere. And I mean, we used to have a Monroe Doctrine that says, hey, this is our hemisphere. Europe, stay on that side of the ocean.
Yeah, definitely. And Asia, China, stay in your hemisphere.
Yeah, right.
Because China, as you know, is buying up South America right now.
Yeah. So to be able to fluently see, and by the way, when you can speak Spanish, it's not a big stretch to speak French or Italian. They are all of the Romanic language families, set, or Romanian. They're all of those because they're essentially dialects almost of the same language. So it just helps you to be an effective international statesman. You know, so I will give him that, even though I don't want to say because of his lineage.
No, I'm not saying we want to elect Marco because he's Hispanic. I want to say all things being equal, I'm willing to give him the edge because of his influence with the Hispanic community. And because I don't see anyone else more qualified than him.
Yeah.
So,
the Supreme Court had a ruling, and I'll get to the tie-in on this, where they had to strike down a state agency requirement that barred mixed marriages from adopting kids in state custody. And they said, even though they are correct in their assertion that there will likely be more cultural rejection, the Supreme Court said, we cannot condone and proliferate that mentality. And therefore, we are going to say, no, you cannot bar a family. It's a husband and wife are different colors than each other.
So they weren't allowed to adopt black or white.
Yeah.
Right.
They were considered unfit parents because they weren't
one race or another, right?
Right. And
because they wouldn't fit culturally with black children or white children. So you basically couldn't. So they couldn't even adopt mixed children.
Yeah, it's a good point.
That's really
and so they struck that down. They said, yeah, maybe the kid's going to be in a difficult environment, but we can't condone and say, well, because it's a reality, we must kowtow to it.
So where would they put a mixed child? Which a lot of adoptions were mixed children. Did they put them in a white or a black family?
Yeah, I know.
See, that was interesting. Good thing I wasn't around.
Like we were talking Kunzweiler, there's the reason they give, and then there's the real reason.
Right.
And it could be that the real reason was the state legislature's a bunch of racists.
Right.
Because
there's no such thing as racism.
But as you know, your dad had to refile when they were transferring him to a state where it wasn't legal for him to be married to your mom.
Right.
So.
As I do know, I remember.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, switching gears.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know Oklahoma ranks 45th overall in child well-being?
Okay, tell me the liberal rag that decided this.
Which liberal rag do you think?
I don't know. There's a bunch of them out there.
It's the Tulsa World.
Okay, yeah.
And we're 49th in education.
Yeah.
We're still hanging in there in 49. It's interesting because I know and the reason, of course, everyone is going to try to blame the education part on our dear friend, Ryan Walter.
The only guy who's trying to change anything.
Right. And they're fighting him tooth and nail every bit to try to get us out of 49th.
Right.
And they're fighting him. But I promise you, Ryan didn't get us to or leave us at 49. We had somebody that was there for how long?
Yeah.
8 years.
Oh, gosh. You could say that, but you could say 80 years of the same mentality.
Well, that's true. Well, yeah, but see, what's her name? Janet Barisi.
They fought tooth and nail.
Who fought tooth and nail as well, and finally got her out of there with our other, what's her name that I just,
Joy
Hoffmeister. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
For some reason, my mind doesn't want to remember her name.
Yeah, I know.
The name that shall not be mentioned.
But Joy was put in there by a machine, the education deep state.
Oh, no, I understand. No, I understand fully. But the whole idea, in fact, they went to the point of camouflaging her as a Republican.
Yeah.
And then they got her in there and she didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, she probably ensconced us in 49th, if not 50th.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan comes in and he's trying to dig us out and they're fighting him tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because of that for any academic achievement that he's trying to achieve. It's because he's fighting the people that are keeping us at 49th.
Yeah.
That's the irony.
Yeah.
That Ryan is doing everything he can to try to get us out. And of course, they're attacking him because he's using out-of-state PR firms. He's getting funding from different organizations and different entities to fund a PR campaign to try to get Oklahoma out of this thing. And it's like they're fighting him. And it just makes me sick. I mean, seriously.
It does. By the way, we had, 3 candidates. John Knox, who sat here, Ryan, who sat here in this room with us, and another gal, April, forget her last name. But this April, she, I have a client who's very much part of the deep state education machine. He has a doctorate. Okay. He teaches at a major university here. And I said, by the way, who are you supporting for superintendent of education? And he's, oh yeah, April, oh yeah, she's the best. That told me who I didn't want. That told me who Joy Hoffmeister 2.0 was. So I watched a debate Ryan did. Actually, it was right after he left this table. He went over to, as Rhonda had put together a forum, these candidates, the Tulsa Republican Party did. You know who openly advocated and proselytized their religious convictions more than anybody? Was April. She was trying to sell herself as religious right more than Ryan, more than anyone else.
She's the one that left, right? That left after a few months there.
No, this was a gal who ran and lost in the primary.
Right. Okay, ran against
it. Actually, I think it went to a runoff. And Cox, you and I,
right.
I don't care that he was a Democrat. I used to be a Democrat. He's a decent, honorable man.
I actually liked him. Yeah. No, he was very, very, very good. But see, here's the deal. I have a feeling, because remember, he switched parties even.
Yes.
And I have a feeling if he had won, he'd be getting the same treatment.
Yeah.
They'd be after him.
And Ryan told both of us here, he's, look, if I'm elected, I'm looking for a place to plug John Knox in.
Right.
Cox. John Cox. And, so Ryan gets it. That's a true, honest public servant in John Cox.
No, he is.
But the Joy Hoffmeisters, they are just inventions of the deep state.
Oh yeah, she's an opportunist. No, you're right. And she was terrible for the state, sadly. I mean, honestly, it was terrible. Here's the other story. Ryan Walters enlists political influencers for summer teachers conference. And here's some of these so-called influencers. Tinker Federal Credit Union, OCPA,
of course,
Professional Oklahoma Educators. Who are some of these others? Inspire OK24 Vendors. Is it? I don't even know what that is. Creative Playbook. So I don't even know. I mean, Oklahoma Parents for Student Achievement. I mean, I don't see those as political influencers.
Is this a Tulsa World article again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrea Egger should have told you that.
Okay. Yeah.
She's the education writer down there.
Yeah. And so this is just more nitpick, nipping at his heels. This is, the killer Yorkies. It's sad.
Yeah. So, but yeah, oh no, it's totally that. But see, this just drives me nuts because these people are not helpful. They are not. No. It's like they're doing everything they can to undermine instead of help. They're actually undermining any help and hope.
Yeah.
For education in Oklahoma.
I kind of like my term, the education deep state. I think it fits.
No, you're right. No, exactly right. And I mean, look, wasn't the teacher strike and the raise that these teachers got, wasn't that supposed to be salvation and hallelujah, and things are going to get better for education in Oklahoma. Wasn't that supposed to be the deal?
Of course, money should fix everything.
Yeah, everything. And
by the way, do you know only a third of the schools actually went on strike? We weren't told that.
Oh, no, we weren't.
We thought it was all of them. Only a third. And it was an illegal strike.
And you know what I'm willing to bet you? That 1/3 was all from Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
It was 4 counties largely.
4 counties?
Yeah. Cleveland County, where OU is.
Oh.
Yes. Page County, where OSU is. And then Oklahoma City
and Tulsa.
And Tulsa.
Yeah, the usual. Yep. College towns. Yeah, in the major cities. Yeah. So it's,
And you know what they did? The teachers union would call for the strike locally. And then the school board would declare that we are closing the schools so that it's not an illegal wildcat strike, because they're supposed to be fired immediately for an unauthorized strike. You can only do a strike when your contract is terminated and there's not a good faith effort to continue working towards a new contract. That's when you go on strike. Right. That's when it's authorized. But you break contract, that's grounds for termination right there.
Yeah. Got one more here. You know that they're trying to restrict Ryan Waters as well. The teachers and of course the state board. Well, and they're trying to get the state legislature is trying to restrict him because, well, you know, I'm going to tell you why. You got lobbyists in there getting to the legislators and they're trying to pass these bills to restrict him. Well, thank you, Governor Stitt. Yeah. Governor Stitt, he's vetoed the restrictions on Ryan Walters by executive orders.
Yeah. Now, legislature, I'll tell you, there's only one Republican who is dead set against him. And it's Mark McBride, who I've sat and had lunch with. And Mark and I used to get along good. He'd made mistakes, but he would own them. And I asked John Eccles, the House floor leader, last month, I said, what happened, McBride? And he just said, because they're friends. They used to play poker on Sunday nights together. He says, he's lost his freaking mind. You know, he's just like, what the heck? Because you can always count on that 20 or so Democrats that still are in the House. You know, like Andy Fugate, who you love to mix it up with. Andy's a fun guy. I like Andy personally, but I like messing with him too, just like you do. Andy's actually big on Second Amendment rights, by the way. You know, because it'd be stupid not to. But anyway, so yeah, Mark McBride is really all they got as far as Republicans to go after him. And McBride's lost his mind. Fortunately, he's termed out. You know, this was his last regular.
You said unfortunately?
I said fortunately.
Fortunately, yeah, thank you.
You know,
yeah.
But anyways.
Governor Kevin Stitt on Friday vetoed legislation targeting State Superintendent Ryan Walters, then signed an executive order that may or may not address one of the issues in the stricken language. In clearing the last of this year's, and his type is so bright, in clearing the last of this year's legislation from his desk, Stitt vetoed 2 sections of Senate Bill 1122 that limits the bill for education appropriations. And so in his veto message, Stitt said the first provision was improper and the second was too vague. So the governor has come to Ryan's help, his aid, and
Ryan actually openly in an interview on Newsmax said, you know, the governor does have line item in our state, and I'm hoping he will address this with the you know, discretion he has in the line item. Fortunately, the governor also then put executive orders saying, okay, here's how we, and you know what it came down to? Most of these agencies have paid staffers that do nothing but book media events. Ryan hired an outside firm
Mm-hmm.
at a set fee to handle this.
Right.
And what Mark McBride did was demagogue that into, why are we paying these firms? And it would cost us more in state benefits and retirement benefits to make them state employees. A lot of times we save money by contracting out.
That brings me to another point. And just so you know, basically what we are discussing is the attack on Ryan Walters and the sad state of education in Oklahoma. We've got someone who's trying to buck the system, and the system is trying to buck back.
Yep.
And the governor is coming to the aid of Ryan Walters, and he needs your support.
Yeah.
We need to continue to support this man because he is trying to change education and bring us from 49th up. Okay. Yeah. But anyway, I think I lost my
if I
what were you just talking about?
I want to.
What were you saying? No, what were we talking about last? Because I'm trying to get that thought back. What was the last thing you were saying?
We were talking about contracting.
Oh, yeah.
With the
So, exactly what you're saying. So, a lot of times, I know we went through this when I was on the Pat Campbell show, and how Pat used to get upset because we were hiring some Indiana firm to build something or do a road or something. Mm-hmm. And we were of the opinion, and I agreed with him at the time, that we need in-state contractors to do in-state work, hire within the state. I'm starting to question that because what happens when you become captive or you shrink the pool of bidders, then what happens, you can get to the point where they can start holding you hostage.
Yes.
And one example, now I don't know who the state legislature hired to do this, but if you take the Creek Turnpike to Broken Arrow from where the 169 begins by Grace, the former Grace Church, to Broken Arrow.
Yeah.
And there's an overpass.
A roller coaster bridge, we call it.
You call it and it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoever did that should be sued.
Yeah.
They're probably out of business by now.
Yeah.
Because that is absolutely the worst bridge or overpass construction I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody knows it. That's traveled it.
Yeah.
A Humpty Hump. So I wonder, I haven't looked into who built that, but whoever did should have been fired or should be forced to come back and fix that.
Yeah. Hey, I'm proud of myself. Speaking of highways.
Wait. First of all, your thoughts on that. Let's finish the thought.
Okay.
Right. You and I are both, we're both chasing rabbits. He triggers something and I'm over here. But
what I'm saying is, when the job is to interface these elected officials, state leaders, with national media, it's largely effective when you build over time personal relationships with the booking producers from these different media outlets.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about the Humpty Hump?
Well, we're talking about Ryan Walters contracting out.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, if I'm a producer for Newsmax, I've got to deal with 8 different people or maybe a dozen different people with each agency of state government in Oklahoma. I don't want to deal with 8. I want to deal with 1. And if the state of Oklahoma isn't going to consolidate all these agencies into one media operations and communications director, we'd be better off just contracting out to XYZ public relations firm. And Eddie, you were in media with the music industry. PR is a very important thing, right? And so the more effective you get, what I'm getting at, Eddie, is a private firm who already has an established relationship with Newsmax, for instance, on behalf of 300 different clients. they can offer their services for much cheaper price because it's that same interface with Newsmax spread out over 300 clients instead of one.
Right.
So Ryan may be getting the job done faster and cheaper by going with an outside firm.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Listen, here's the bottom line. Okay. Know the man. Okay. You've got a guy here, okay, who came from a particular background. He knows he's got a target on his chest and his back and probably between his eyes. Okay. Do you think he's going to go out and try to do something to increase the target?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guarantee you he is checking every jot and tittle of every contract that he is doing to make sure it's above board.
Tight ship. Yep.
Type shit. And then he has somebody who I thought this April was, but remember they had the story about this girl that was working for him that quit.
Yeah.
Because she said it wasn't what I signed up for, you know.
How many employees do that? Of course.
It was like one of the Trump employees, you know, afterwards.
And Omarosa?
Well, no, the one that testified.
Oh God, that woman,
yeah,
who lied, made up a story,
about him trying to reach for the wheel.
She wasn't even there.
Yes, she wasn't the wheel of the beast. He was trying to take over the wheel. But anyway, so you know, you get these people, and but you got to know either you trust them or you don't. And I guarantee you, I trust Ryan Walters 100 times before I trust his predecessor. Yeah. Hey. Joy, I just, you know, see, I had the benefit of meeting Joy when she came to our KFAQ studios. And, you know, we got to interview her and I got to listen to her and look at her. And she never would look at me. She was afraid to look at me. And the few questions I did ask her, she halfway answered and wouldn't even look at me, you know, when she was answering, because so I could tell she was afraid the whole time. And of course, you know, she engaged with Pat the whole time, but because she knew that I was the guy that was going to go after her. And it's just, you know, and we've sat here with Ryan and we asked questions and knew about things off air as well, to know that, you know, he's different. You know, he was truly, and like I said, if you remember, I was actually for Brian Cox. I'm sorry, Brian. He's an actor. The late. No, I guess Brian Cox is still alive. But I'm sorry, but anyway, John. Yeah, I remember. You remember I was supporting John Cox. Yeah. I thought John Cox was a better guy in maturity, et cetera, et cetera. So I wasn't even totally, I mean, Ryan was number 2. Yeah. And so I wasn't all that, but now that he won it, you know, I was totally supportive. Yeah. So I just, I don't like this. I hate that we have this newspaper that and not just the newspaper, our television networks and everything, radio, that find it necessary to be the mouthpiece for disgruntled student, education union and progressive entities continually nitpicking at everything the man does instead of being supportive and actually finding out, asking, why are you doing, you know, true journalism would be going to Ryan, sitting down and saying in a non-prejudicial manner, why are you using this company? Yep. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Is there a reason why you're doing this instead of this.
Yep.
This is the way it's been done. You're doing it. Why? And then find out what's the difference. What would it cost, or what would you report? What would it cost if you use this company?
Mm-hmm.
What would it cost if you use that company?
Yeah.
Is it possible that there were some shenanigans going on with TPS?
Yeah.
Were there shenanigans going on with the prior administration here?
Okay.
I mean, but they don't do that.
Yeah.
They just automatically, we got to get him. We got to get him. We got to get him.
Yeah.
That has to stop.
Yep. Can I segue? Roller coaster bridge?
Oh, we're going back to the bridge?
Oh, actually segueing off of it.
Oh, okay.
So we had Randy Crable in several months back, and I just off the cuff said, hey, have you seen the Oklahoma Stonehenge? The intersection Highway 75 and I-44. That stuck. Now all of the TV stations refer to it as the Oklahoma Stonehenge.
Has it?
The money is now appropriated to finish it.
Okay, I was going to say.
Yeah, what a mess. It is a monument to bad management and appropriation of highway funds.
Yeah.
It's so, but evidently it's now getting some national notoriety as the Oklahoma Stonehenge, as those, boondoggle projects that never got finished and sit there as a monument to failure in government.
Monument to failure. It's like Robert Byrd's Bridge to Nowhere. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he got all this money for, I don't know where it was supposed to go, but they built this bridge and it stopped. And and there was nowhere for it to go.
Right. Well, our state legislature has a bunch of them. There was one, when they had to redo I-40 around Southside Oklahoma City. And it was, I don't know if you remember, one day, summer afternoon in Minneapolis, I-35 bridge over the Mississippi collapsed.
Yeah.
And they looked at it and they said, we've got a structural design failure. And highway departments all over the nation studied, said, do we have that same thing here? And sure enough, in Oklahoma City, they had that. So they had to immediately redo that. And they said the fastest way is just move the highway a half mile south. And it cost a lot of money, but it kept the interstate flow of traffic going. So once they moved the highway over, all of a sudden you got all this land that's just, what do we do with it? So they gave a bunch of it to the Oklahoma tribes to be a First Oklahomans Museum.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they kept giving money, and the thing never gets built.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a monument sitting right next to the interstate because it never gets finished. Well, we got another one here in Tulsa, the Oklahoma Pops Museum.
They never finished that.
9 years ago, we funded it.
Yeah,
we thought.
I remember.
Now they're needing to match further appropriations with private dollars because the legislature says, okay, we will match private, up to a certain amount of money. They have yet to open a single exhibit.
See, that's funny because both of those, the Indian Museum and the Oklahoma Pops, Pat and I, those were hot topics when I was still on
the air. It
there.
was the same last week of session in 2015 that funded both of those.
And I remember me being against both of those, railing against those. And it's funny to hear because I never followed up because I left shortly after that, probably 6 months after.
Why do you need a museum to worship your own culture?
Right.
Museums are for extinct cultures and histories.
Well, yeah, right. And not only that, but with all of the tribe money, if they felt that strongly about it with the casino money and when they're not paying taxes and stuff, they should be able to raise the money for it. I mean, that was a no-brainer back then.
Right.
And so apparently the legislature got smart and said, no mas. Yeah.
The worst one was back in the mid-'70s when we started getting all this oil money. And the Speaker of the House was Rob Johnson, I think, from Eufaula. And he had this boondoggle project that was going to help Eufaula tourism. We were going to build a 5-star world-class resort. And it was open for 2 years. And it finally got just closed, shuttered. They sold it for pennies on the dollar, and the Indian tribe bought it. And I mean, it was a waste. Why would the government get involved in it? Because people then say, why am I spending 3 times what it costs to stay at a Holiday Inn for a government property? And, they're trying to create this, trying to showcase Oklahoma's this wonderland, like Lake Buena Vista in Orlando or something like that. Yeah. That's what they're really trying to do.
Yeah, it's like well, see, what's interesting, the Germans have gotten away with it with these what do you call them? Concentration camps. Buchenwald and what's the famous one?
Auschwitz.
Well, Auschwitz is one, but the one near where I live right by. I live 30 miles from it.
There's Bergen something or other.
Bergen-Belsen.
One of them was. A couple are in Poland, though.
Yeah. Auschwitz is in Poland. Bergen-Belsen, I think, is there. But the one that's right by me, I can't think of the one. The most famous one. And I live right next to it, and I can't think of that one today.
Well, yeah, because the Nuremberg trials were there by where you grew up.
Well, yeah, they were in Nuremberg, but this was outside Munich.
Okay.
But anyway, all of them, and they charge money for people to go to these things.
Yeah.
And they were able to make money off of these things. But it's funny that, Americans aren't so keen on paying to see the Indian Dhaka.
Yeah.
How can I think of Dhaka? It's like right next to me. Yeah. It's like, but anyway, I guess we're not so enamored by what happened to the Native Americans, as you don't like to call them. But yeah, someday we'll have to get into the whole discussion about Indians and Buffalo Soldiers. That's a good story. But anyway, hey, listen, let's transition to the elections coming up Tuesday.
Right. We've got a particular statewide race for corporation commissioner. A lot of us think that Brian Bingman is likely to win that. He was been serving as Secretary of State under Stitt. He ran for it before, lost, but he was running against Bob Anthony. And then the other thing is he was also Senate President pro temp for a good amount of time. He's from Sapulpa. So he's
about the next closest thing to a career politician.
Yes. And I would say if you think he's tight with Chamber of Commerce, he'd probably be right.
Yeah.
I watched his legislative agenda was.
He's never been one of my favorites, but anyway, but he is running. Who's his competition?
Good question.
Yeah. That's why he'll probably.
Yeah. There you go.
That's probably why he'll win.
Yeah. So, but other than that, you got some Senate races. Cody Rogers over here, Dan Newberry's old seat, which is kind of takes in Sapulpa, West Tulsa, and down to Jinx. That he's up again running. He actually has a contender, but part of it is because for a long time he was planning on leaving the Senate, running for for a county commissioner. Then he said, you know what, I think I'll stick with it. Well, now he's got a challenger, So, in fact, that day I was over at Tomahawk Consulting. He had just walked out. They were prepping him. He's one of the clients for a debate that night. Let's see. What's the name? Dan Newhouse. Why can't I think of his first name? Anyway, he's not running again. So now that you got an open seat, this Broken Arrow. Bill Bickerstaff's one of the people I know there. Bill's been a very conservative Republican, and got a few other challengers. Paul Hassink, who's been here, he's up again, but he has a challenger as well. This is all in Republican Party primary, and that's kind of it around Tulsa area. There are a few other open seats. There are a lot of open seats, including Senate President Pro Tem Greg Treat. His seat's open. Charles McCall, his seat's open. These are all term limited. We talked Mark McBride, John Eccles, seats open. So you've got a lot of turnover happening around the state. Julie Daniels, senator from Bartlesville, former mayor up there, she's being challenged by very conservative Wendy Stearman, but I don't think Wendy's going to make it too far in that. Now, to county seats, big time county commissioner seat, you and I've rubbed shoulders with a bunch of them on Wednesday. We've got a city councilor is running from Tulsa City Council, and then also a former mayor of Jenks and legislator Sims, who's Lonnie Sims, who I happen to be supporting.
Yeah, I saw Lonnie last night.
Yeah,
at the Republican.
I really think he's sharp. I liked his answers. I got to ask some questions. I got some good answers.
He seems like just a nice guy.
Let's not go into municipal races because that isn't on the ballot this week.
Right.
And I don't want to overwhelm people with that.
Right.
But anyway, a lot of communities, county seats, Senate seat down there in McAllister. I've been following Chris Morris, who's been put on a executive leave while he faces felony charges for corruption in selling his personal property to the sheriff's office as brand new, even though he knows it's a lemon, has told people the thing is a lemon, is an off-road vehicle. It's sad because I know him. I've actually helped him out with some mental health issues in his jail.
Yeah, you just wonder why these people do these things. I mean, it's just why.
Yeah.
Why?
So you got a number of those things going on in the state. Kunzweiler's in the middle of his term. He was in here earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's about wrapped it up. There's not a whole lot of energy in this year's stuff, primaries. Not a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So that takes care of that. And we don't even know what's going to be the name of the former Big 12 conference, but evidently they're selling naming rights to whatever corporation's willing to give them the most money.
Yeah, listen, I think we are about to wrap it up. I do want to do one thing. We're not going to get into municipal races, but I feel I need to make an announcement just to
please do
be sure everybody knows that I have formally filed for the city council. I am going to be running for city council, District 7, which goes from 51st Street, which is right here, down to 101st and Sheridan over to Mingo.
Kind of the southeast corner of the city.
Yeah. But so anyway, I won't be doing politicking on this podcast. If I'm going to have to check to see what the rules are, but either way, I'm not going to use this as a politicking vehicle. I just don't want to do that, but I do feel I need to announce it, at least let you guys know that I have filed, and that's about it. So I'm looking forward to a nice spirited race, and
not on your race, I understand.
Right, exactly.
Well, we may have another city councilor in or two.
Oh yeah. Oh no, definitely. We want to be able to open this venue up for other people to be able to share their platforms. And in fact, you're talking about Paul Hassink, who is in this district.
Well, Paul or Jamie Fowler?
Right. No, I was just mentioning Paul because this office or this studio is right in the middle of his. Yeah. I saw him the other day, and so it's too late to bring him back in now. But because Tuesday is unless
we get a run up,
unless we get a
but or the general election,
right?
too.
The general election, exactly.
That's going to be the real one,
right? That's when we'll see. So we'll see how it all goes. But anyway, I just wanted to announce that and let you guys know, and that's going to be it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and a week. Oh, by the way, it's just so funny that the heat hit us all of a sudden. Remember, I was wondering, and I always do this, man, is summer ever going to get here? And then yesterday it got here.
Bam. You know what I was doing yesterday?
My car said 106 degrees. Now, my wife said it was only 90 something, low 90s, but I don't know, because my car, when I got my car temperature said 106. So,
I was in a black metal unair conditioned building yesterday.
A black metal building.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's called Barnuminium. It's my son's house we're building, and we were hanging sheetrock. So not only was I in there, I was up on a ladder.
And his house is going to be black?
His house is black metal, siding metal.
But is he going to paint it eventually?
No, he likes that black.
Wow.
He likes that.
You hear that sound? Wildfire? The song Wildfire?
Yeah.
Who do you think who do you think Wildfire is? It's my wife.
Oh,
she's calling. Hey, there was one thing. Oh, I want to make one more announcement. Being an insurance agent, I feel it's my duty to let everybody know the hailstorm we had a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. If you lived in an area where you had the hailstones and you have not had your roof inspected, get it inspected. Yeah. I happened to have the stones hit my house. I don't know if we talked about it, but they were larger than golf ball. They were probably tangerine size, I would say. And I'm getting a new roof. Everyone that I have spoken to of my clients and my neighbors, they're getting a new roof. Mm-hmm. But here's how you do it. Here's how to do it. Okay. Listen to this advice. Call a roofer first, not your insurance company. Mm-hmm. Call a roofer. Have the roofer come and verify that it is a total loss to your roof. Because what will happen if you don't, you call the insurance company, they will come and they may possibly try to deny it. Certain companies in particular, I won't mention any names, they may try to say no and talk you out of it, or it'll be a fight when the roofer comes out. The thing to do is get a roofer, a quality roofer, good, good, no name, or not as they call it, shag leg.
An established Oklahoma roofer.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And get them to look at your roof, inspect your roof, and qualify that it's a total loss to your roof. Then call the insurance company. Or better yet, have them meet the adjuster there.
That's it. Yep.
Meet the adjuster there to go over the roof, and things will be fine. So anyway, that's just a tip for you guys. And I've been meaning to say that for a while. I'm just shocked in my neighborhood. Hardly anyone now around my house. All of those, my neighbors, I've informed them, and they've all turned their claims in. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more info I could give you, because the insurance companies have new rules. The deductibles have gone way up. Some people don't even know they have a 3% deductible now, which means if you have a $300,000 house, it's a $9,000 deductible. Mm-hmm. $200,000 house, it's a $6,000 deductible. Mm-hmm. So, plus depreciation. Yeah. So a lot involved. But anyway, the important thing is, get your roof checked. If you're in the hail area where you had the hailstorm, get it checked, and then call it in.
I got a question. I know you want a professional to look at it. Don't look at yourself. But Eddie, for you, what were the physical signs that you could see that were the damage? It hits the shingle and does what?
Puts a hole in it. I mean, it'll leave a mark. It'll take the granulation away, and it'll leave a black mark. And then usually it'll just leave a black mark because what happens, it'll put a hole in the roof.
Yeah, because those granules are protecting the tar and fiberglass from ultraviolet deterioration.
Right.
You lose those granules, and eventually it starts deteriorating.
Right. But if the hail hits hard enough, it punches through it all.
It tears it. Yeah.
Right. And you'll have if it hits on an edge, it'll tear the edge off.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, plus it'll also it'll damage your vent pipes and things. It'll dent those and hit those. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. It might have damaged your siding even. So there's a lot of things, but the roofer will explain to you they'll know what they're looking for.
Yeah. The thing, because that's what I did. I told my roofer who was roofing my neighbors, I said, was this an insurance claim or are they just paying for it themselves? It's insurance. I said, well, would you look at mine? It's the house right next door here. And I said, if you can convince my adjuster that it's a legitimate insurance claim, then you get the job. Now, all of a sudden, I got a guy on commission selling that my house is bad, dealing with a guy trying to save the insurance company paying a claim. They were both motivated for whatever their position was.
Right.
But ultimately, the facts backed up that I had a claim.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, they can't deny it. They'll know. Now, for me, the roofer looked at it first, and then the adjuster came out. He surprised me. He was there. I'm going to church on Sunday morning, and there's the guy outside my house. Oh, how can I help you? Yeah, I'm here to look at your roof. And so, it was a different situation, but he still confirmed it. I mean, I took pictures of the, a hail ball this size, so.
And you might be backed up 6 months before they get it done.
Yeah, that's the other thing eventually, because it's going to pick up as people start getting roofs and they'll run out of roofing materials.
Oh.
And the costs go up. Ooh. So the earlier, the better. So anyway, that's it. My wife's calling. That's I better go. Hey, God bless everybody. We will see you when we see you.
Yeah.